Welcome back to another episode of Born Again Bow Hunting Podcast.
Shoo-wee!
And as you guys saw last episode, we went to the ODNR meeting, and we are joined by Mike Rex on this episode. So, Mike, we want to thank you for kind of reaching out to us and wanting to be on the podcast. And we got some questions that we want to ask, and then we're also going to get into some deer hunting because if anybody's watching the video episode, that wall back behind you has a lot of racks, and they're pretty large.
Yeah, we can't even see half of them. But that meeting or that episode last week was a little bit different, probably from what. And I haven't edited the video because, obviously we have a couple in the bank, so we're recording this, and the episode that you guys listened to last week is still not technically out yet. So I don't know how the video is going to turn out because we
did you video it?
Yeah, we videoed it. So Kevin had this really nice phone mount thing that he stuck to the windshield, and it dropped down, and we had his little
the action cam,
just the action cam. So of course we don't have the quality of the big cameras that we run in the studio, but myself, Kevin, Cromer, we drove down there.
Dude, that's cool.
So what we did was, because you weren't there, Jarrett, we kind of did a our thoughts, because we've never been to a meeting. So we kind of did our thoughts of what we can expect, and then we did
post meeting
corrections of what our thoughts were.
Right.
So it was very interesting.
Good.
That's cool.
Yeah. We had
it's
a good
different.
time.
It's different. It's good to do different things every once in a while.
Yeah. All right, Mike. For anybody that doesn't know, why don't you introduce yourself? Maybe talk about your position on the council, how long you've been doing that. Just your elevator speech.
Okay. So my name is Mike Rex. I'm chairman of the Ohio Wildlife Council. I've been on the council for 10 years. I've been chairman for the last 3 years.
So, I'm just gonna ask it. How do you get on the council? Is it a vote or appointed, or how does that work?
No, you're appointed by the governor.
Okay.
So there are 4 Republicans, 4 Democrats, and at least 2 council members have to derive their income or their primary income from agriculture. And that goes back to, I think the council was founded sometime in the 1950s. So that takes it back to there. But no, so you're appointed by the governor. Usually the governor will consult other people that he knows in the hunting community, the fishing community. And because for example, I was first appointed by Governor Kasich, and he didn't know me from Adam, So he talked to the director at the time. He talked to some former chiefs and people that did know me. And so the governor, usually in positions like this, he sort of relies on people that are in his inner circle to help him make these kind of decisions.
Yeah.
Okay. And now you said that your specific title, and this is something that we actually messed up on the way down to Columbus the other day. I thought that Mike was the chief, like the head honcho.
Right.
But
and you
Kendra, is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So
it works like this. So the Wildlife Council is an oversight committee over the Division of Wildlife. Kendra Wecker is the chief of the Division of Wildlife. She's actually employed by the Division of Wildlife. Wildlife Council members are all volunteers. We don't get paid to do this. We just do it for the love of wildlife. And in some states call it a game commission. In Ohio, we call it a Wildlife Council. I think, I've seen a bunch of different names for the type committee, but basically what we are is we're an oversight committee. So whenever the Division of Wildlife proposes a rule for either a bag limit, a season, anything like that, it's got to go in front of the council, and then we say yes or no.
Okay. So, how did the journey start from you being because you said you were on the council for 7 years, is that correct? And then
I've been on 10 years total. I've been chairman for 3 years.
Yeah. So what I was getting at is 7 years on council and then 3 years of chairman. So how did you make that transition from council to chairman? Obviously you said it was appointed, but
yeah. Well, so it's like this: the governor doesn't appoint the chairman; the council appoints a chairman. So we have a secretary, we have a vice chair, and a chair. Okay. And so Dr. Paul Meckling was the chairman before me.
Okay.
And he stepped down and stayed on the council. And then the other council members got together and they appointed a chairman. Okay. And basically the chairman would be similar to like the Speaker of the House. I facilitate the meetings where the chairman runs the meetings. In the event of a tie, if we'd have a tie vote, kind of like the Speaker of the House, the chairman's vote breaks the tie. But basically my job as chairman is to facilitate the meetings.
Okay. That was my next question. Yeah, so you're reading my mind. So pretend that you're talking to a bunch of 6-year-olds, because in all honesty,
and you kind of could be.
And yeah, this is true. In all honesty, we don't know, and we're wanting to know. What you said that Kendra, who is the chief, works for the DNR. What are her responsibilities when it comes to, day to day?
Well, I mean, she runs so it's like this. You have the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, and under the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, you have a director, then you have 2 assistant directors, and then under those, you have the Division of Oil and Gas, you have the forestry, you have wildlife, there's natural preserves and area, parks, and watercraft. So you have different entities underneath the blanket of the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. So the ODNR director is a woman named Mary Mertz. And then under her are 2 assistant directors, a gentleman named Steve Gray, who used to be the chief of the Division of Wildlife and retired, and a gal named Mindy Banky. And they kind of oversee specific areas. And then under them, each division has a chief. And then the chief has an assistant chief, and then everybody else sort of filters down. So I'm not exactly sure how many people are in the Division of Wildlife. It's in the hundreds, and Kendra would be the head person basically of the Division of Wildlife. Mm-hmm. So Kendra does not report to me or to the Wildlife Council. She reports to the director.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
But the Division of Wildlife can't make a rule proposal or can't get a change made or a season date or a bag limit without the Wildlife Council saying yes or no.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. So while we're talking about, while you bring that up, let's talk about that a little bit. How, in the state of Ohio, how are laws and regulations proposed, or
what's the process?
Yeah, what is the process?
Yeah, so the process is like this. They come from the Division of Wildlife, and usually, so you have program administrators over fish, you have a program administrator over wildlife, you have a deer program administrator who reports to him. And that would be like Clint McCoy is our head deer biologist. He's the program administrator. So for example, a deer regulation, it goes like this. Clint usually and his staff make a recommendation to the program administrator, which would be a guy named Mike Reynolds. Then Mike Reynolds would turn around, go to the assistant chief and the chief and say, hey, we want to change this date. We want to do this. We want to change this bag limit. Here's why. This is what the science says. This is the data. We think the hunters will support it. The fishermen will support it. Then they draw up the rule proposal. Then the rule proposal is what you guys saw at the last meeting was at the wildlife hearing, which was afterwards. Those are the proposals for the upcoming vote. We vote twice a year. We vote in the spring and then we vote in the fall. And so what you guys saw, if you stuck around for the public hearing afterwards, was Chief Wecker read the proposals and then gave the public an opportunity to comment on them. And then there's a public comment period. Then in between now and I believe our next meeting's on the 28th of this month, then we will actually vote on the proposals that you heard. And those are usually, we vote in the spring for things coming up in the fall. We vote in the fall for things coming up in the spring.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, obviously we were there. I spoke for the brief 3 minutes or whatever that you guys gave us for the platform on just my thoughts on, deer regulations, herd health, we can get into that later. One of the questions that I had was, and I got to be careful with how I word this because I don't want to come across as being disrespectful at all, but like how loud was our voice at that meeting? Would you argue that unless 100 people came pounding on the door, most of those regulations and laws are pretty much set in stone? Or what are your thoughts? Like, how does that work?
So I can give you some examples. So I will say this: people who show up tend to have a better outcome than people that just complain to each other on social media platforms. So, I'm not sure how much, I participate in social media. I put myself out there for criticism, and because I've learned a lot over the last, I don't know, however long I've been on social media, 20 plus years. I've learned a lot that I would have not known without it. And you kind of, it helps you to take the pulse of, of what the public sentiment is. And I've also had some really good ideas, things I never would have considered, never would have thought of. So I like social media, but I don't know how much of that is monitored by the Division of Wildlife. They're actually making the proposals to the Wildlife Council. But I will say this, it's been my experience that the people that show up tend to be heard. And I'll give you an example. So fall turkey hunting. I'm a real avid turkey hunter. I don't bother much in the fall because I'm also an avid deer hunter. But most of the people that I know that fall turkey hunt aren't really targeting turkeys. They're people that are in the landowners, people that happen to buy a turkey tag and they're bow hunting or whatever, and a flock of turkeys comes by and they shoot one. I know very few people that actually go out and target them and bust up the flock and try to assembly yelp them back and hunt them with dog, that kind of stuff. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't a lot of those people out there. I personally don't know. So we went to a couple of years ago. The division decided, hey, our turkey flock, is suffering. We shoot hens in the fall. Things, if you're trying to rebuild a population, the last thing you want to do is shoot hens or shoot females. So we need to do some things to maybe rein this in a little bit. And so the fall turkey season used to be like 7 weeks long, and I think they made a proposal to cut it back to like 5 weeks, which I honestly didn't think would be met with any pushback whatsoever. And boy, was I wrong. I mean, these folks showed up in mass. And I mean, it was like the end of the world and a seventh sign of the apocalypse. And, if you take this away from us, our kids aren't going to college and they're going to repossess my house. And I mean, it was like the end of the world to these folks. And it really surprised me how many passionate people there are out there that like to fall turkey hunt. And so the division wound up making an amendment to the rule proposal to, I don't want to say to appease them, but to the biology fit too. So they won't, if public opinion is one way and the biology is another way, they tend to err towards the biology. But if there's really no dramatic difference one way or the other, people that show up have a much better chance of being heard and of getting their opinions considered than people who don't show up and just complain about it online or complain about it amongst ourselves.
Amen. So that's actually one of the main reasons why we put our money where our mouth was.
Took time off work to go down to the meeting and be part of it.
Yeah, because we have a platform, of course, so we've voiced our opinion on it. We've had other guests voice their opinion on it. So we're like, you know what? Instead of just sitting here and basically flapping our jaws, let's go and see what it's about.
Right, because we did the same thing and discussed, I mean, really, what are we doing by sitting here and, quote unquote, complaining?
Yeah.
We're not doing anything.
Yeah, we're stirring the pot and that's it.
We wanted to figure out what do we need to do to actually make a difference. And this was one thing we wanted to talk about.
Yeah. Mike, I do have a question on that story. So you said there was people that came, in masses or whatever, and
yes,
pitchforks and shovels and
right.
So how explain to me how did the DNR did the council let the DNR know, like, hey, we had 100 people show up at this proposal meeting, all saying that they were against? How did that get passed along?
For one, the folks from the DNR were there and saw it, so that's part of it. We didn't really have to tell them about it. But yeah, there was much discussion. And I'll also tell you that there's sort of a misguided perception that the Wildlife Council is just a rubber stamp for the Division of Wildlife, which couldn't be farther from the truth. And I'll tell you how the process goes. So the rule proposals that you guys heard, we first heard about those back, I believe, in February. So in between the time a rule proposal is rolled out and actually gets voted on, if it's something in the even slightest bit controversial or we don't agree with it, there's lots of back and forth talking, and the proposal's often amended before it goes to a vote. So it looks like to the public, well, those guys just say yes to everything. They don't understand that proposal was made months ago, and if there was something about it that we didn't like or the general public was adamantly opposed to, and the science again didn't matter-of-factly say we need to do this, then there oftentimes that will be modified before it ever comes to a vote. So it's not like, it's 100%, they always vote yes. It's that rule's been changed, 5 different times before it was proposed and then voted on.
Does the public know about like the 5 times before it's proposed?
Well, I can tell you this, you're welcome to email the council members. You can call the council members. You can email the division. You can call them. They have a public comment period. So here's another example. So we had a really, really bad EHD outbreak in my part of the state this past year. Okay, so we had a special wildlife council meeting in September. We met down here in District 4, and there were so many people show up at the District 4 office, they had to close the doors because the fire marshal said, hey, you're beyond the carrying capacity or the limit of people in this building. And then they left it open for public comments for a month before actually the vote happened. And we got over 1,000 comments, and I read them all. And it was really interesting because there were like, in excess of 1,000 people really wanted to either see the season shut down. They wanted to see it dramatically curtailed. They wanted to see action. They wanted to see them do something right now, not wait, a year later or whatever. And maybe 2 or 3 people were opposed to any kind of limitations. So then the law passed, and then all of a sudden my phone starts ringing and emails and, hey, you can't do this, and I got plenty of deer at my house and blah, blah. The quote unquote silent majority came out of the woodwork after we voted, but it wasn't they weren't a majority. They were a handful of people that lived in an area. So not all areas of Athens, Meigs, Washington, and Morgan County got hit the same. Right. And the western part of Meigs County, the western part of Athens County, they got hit, but not nearly as bad as the central and the eastern part. So most of those people from the western part started emailing and calling and, hey, we still got a bunch of deer on my property and now you won't let me kill them. I had one guy from Vermont who called me. He leased property in Meigs County, and he and his entire family shot does the first weekend with the intent of coming back here to trophy hunt during gun season, and they were all tagged out. Wow. They didn't realize that by shooting those does the first, and I understand. I mean, he had a legitimate right, but sometimes the baby gets thrown out with the bathwater.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, I guess my thoughts were the EHD thing was, like I'll say a traumatic event, right? I guess where I was kind of going with that question was, when we were at the last council meeting, it was the proposal meeting where you guys went over all the new proposals for the regulations and stuff. There was one that kind of caught me off guard a little bit, and I'm not a big turkey hunter, but it was the eliminating archery during the fall season. So I guess, I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm reading up on every reg proposal and I'm not following the DNR, step for step, but somebody that is very passionate about the outdoors, et cetera, like that kind of caught me off guard. What can people do, or what, maybe even use me as an example, what can I do in the future to be more prepared for, because you had mentioned earlier that you guys probably, that's probably a law or a regulation change that you guys kind of bickered about for quite some time. How does the average person know about that before it's a proposed regulation change?
Well, again, it was first rolled out in February, so it's usually a couple of months before. You would have to either read the meeting minutes or come to the meeting, or you would obviously have to talk to somebody.
Okay.
So getting back to that rule proposal, so where that's coming from is this: in the fall of the year, over 50% of the harvest is archery. In the spring of the year, approximately 2% is archery.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you? That tells you that a lot of those turkeys that are being killed are, like I said, I call them incidental shootings. They're people that happen to be in the woods hunting. They're not targeting turkeys, but they have a tag in their pocket, or they own the ground. They don't need a tag.
They're bow hunting.
And a flock of turkeys comes by and they're shooting them. So the other issue we have is, and this has gone back and forth, fall turkey hunting has been a topic of contention with the council and with the division for a while, because our turkey flock is not what it once was. I mean, and that doesn't mean it's still not good. I think the turkey hunting in Ohio is still fantastic, but there's no question that we had better days 15, 20 years ago. And so in the fall of the year, we're allowed to shoot hens. So the first thing we thought, well, maybe we'll take the hens out of the equation. Well, the people that like to fall turkey hunt were adamantly against that. I mean, these are the people that actually go out and target them, because a Jake, a juvenile gobbler, and a Jenny, a juvenile hen in the fall, are almost indistinguishable. And so they might think they're shooting into Jake and they shot a Jenny or whatever. But my argument to that is, shouldn't be shooting Jakes either. But anyway, so
I agree.
It was kind of a compromise to reduce the harvest even more. And statistically, the fall harvest is insignificant. I mean, I think last year we killed 600 birds out of a flock of 20,000+. So it's really not, it doesn't statistically matter one way or the other, but I think it sends a poor message. So if you're trying to tell the general population that, hey, we've cut it from two gobblers down to one, we've shortened the fall seed, we've done all these things to make everybody aware that, things aren't as good as they once were. And so that it sends a message, an even further message that, hey, we really ought to take it easy on these things. And so that's where that was coming from. And then, of course, bait's another issue. How many archers are hunting over bait? It's illegal to hunt turkeys over bait. How would a game warden police that? You know what I'm saying? How would they know archery equipment's silent? You don't hear a gunshot, all that stuff. And so how would you know? And so it would be a difficult thing to police. But if we said, okay, we just take archery out of the equation, the kill will probably be cut in half again. And again, that'll knock it down to maybe 300 birds. But the folks that like to hunt them, that go out and physically target them, the majority, not all, but the majority of those folks will like this. And I've talked to a lot of folks about this, and most of the guys I know that like to fall turkey hunt are in favor. There's a handful of, the Ohio Bowhunters Association, for one, they don't like the idea. Of course, they represent archers or bow hunters. So yeah, and there are a few other folks I know that do target turkeys in the fall, and they go out and hide behind trees, which, by the way, is the summit of difficulty. Killing a turkey with a bow outside of a blind is by far the most difficult turkey hunting endeavor there is. Yeah. Shooting them from inside a blind is not really a big deal. You can break dance inside a blind. Turkeys can't pay no attention to you. But you try to get drawn on one hiding behind a tree or something, and it is hard. It is really hard. So the handful of people that do that on a routine basis, they're justifiably upset. But there's nothing stopping those folks from doing that in the spring. They can still hunt with their bow. They just hunt with them in the spring.
Yeah. No, I would, not to say that I don't disagree or agree with the law. I was just kind of shocked that it was like, hey, how'd this kind of get slipped through without me knowing about it? That was all kind of just.
Yeah, it goes back to the division just looking at ways to kind of rein things back, with the idea that we want to do anything we can to grow the herd, or not grow the flock. So I don't know if you probably noticed, but our seasons were later this year. And so that had to do with dates, the way the fourth Saturday falls, and some years we have a 2-week gap between the South Zone and North Zone. They're trying to get rid of that. Also, some of the new data from OSU, the radio collared hens, is showing that our hens actually nest maybe a little later than we thought. And so it makes sense to move the season up that following week, because wild turkeys are the only game bird that we hunt during their mating season. And there is some evidence out there that part of the demise of the eastern wild turkey, maybe of all of the turkey flocks, is that we hunt them during their mating season, and we may be altering their mating some. There's some data out there that suggests that the most vocal gobblers, the most dominant gobblers, do a lot of breeding. They do a lot of the breeding. Of course, those are also the turkeys that get shot, right? The ones that make a lot of noise are the ones that draw a lot of attention, and bobcats and coyotes and everything else. And so there's a lot of new information out there that is saying, hey, maybe we ought to push this back a little bit and give them a little bit of a reprieve.
Now, like you say, with the Ohio State using the radio collars on these, are you also going with like the neighboring states to see how they monitor their herd?
There's a cooperative. I mean, Pennsylvania's doing this, Maryland's doing this. There's several states that are all doing this at the same time. And yes, we're all sharing information. And if you come to a Wildlife Council meeting in the fall, you'll see a lot of the data from this spring, and it'll list what they're seeing in other states. Yeah, there's a cooperative with all the Midwest states. They're all working, because it's not just us. I mean, the eastern wild turkey population has been declining, all over its range. I mean, not just Ohio; it's all over the place.
Yeah, well, that's cool.
Excuse my ignorance, Mike, but I just thought of something when you and Kevin were talking. Does the council stream or put a post video production of the meetings up? Or
no, we used to during COVID. We did, and we quit doing that about a year and a half ago.
Okay.
So no, we did for several years, but we haven't in the last year or so.
So is that something that's you guys are thinking about changing in the future? Are you pretty confident with it? It's not going to be a
thing. Believe it or not me personally, but there were some council members that didn't like the idea, and it's not that they wanted to hold back information or anything like that, but there was just some concern. I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. There was just some concern with some council members that voiced concern to me. Like I said, personally, I don't care, but I mean, I'm on your podcast. I don't care. I'm fine with talking with people publicly like this, but there was some pushback, and basically the governor, to all of the oversight committees like ours, they relinquished that maybe a year and a half ago, where I think all the public meetings like that were broadcast during the pandemic and for at least a year or two afterwards.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. My only thoughts on or why I brought that up is, Kevin's a business owner. I work stupid hours. Jarrett, also business owner. So it's like, for us to come down to these meetings,
it's a big deal. It's going to be absolutely
worked around. And we drove an hour and a half down to Columbus, and I want to be involved. I want my voice to be heard, but frankly, I don't see, and this is just me talking to you. I don't see it I don't see it very practical for the working man. And then you guys obviously, sportsman, the working sportsman, to be able to make every single meeting, because frankly, we got families, we got young kids.
I get that. Yeah. No, I hear you, and I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
Hey, what do you guys think of this idea? So this is something we've been bouncing around. Moving the county, we have them, or historically we have almost all of them in Columbus, which that's a central location. Everybody drives about the same distance. But we did have that special meeting in Athens back in September, and there's a couple council members that are very interested in the idea of moving the council meeting to different districts. The state's broken into 5 districts of Division of Wildlife, moving to a different district. And personally, I have no problem with it. I wouldn't mind, because it would basically make it easier for, like you just said, people that live close by that don't have the time to drive or just physically can't for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. So what's your guys' opinion on something like that?
I think there would be a benefit and a negative. So you would probably draw, like you said, the people that are closer to whatever district you're hosting it in at that meeting.
Yeah.
But you would probably defer people from making a longer drive to it.
Yeah, the opposite side of the state. I would agree.
So
I would agree.
I guess I could see both ways, but you'd have a benefit and a negative, I think, too.
Yeah. Another benefit, though, might get some fresh faces, where if you start coming to these meetings more regularly, you'll see a lot of the usual suspects. I mean, there's a lot of the same people come. We don't get a lot of new people. We do get some, but not a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that if we moved it around, I think we would see a lot more new people that for whatever reason don't want to drive to Columbus.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure that the people that you see in there consistently, you guys probably all know them by name, right?
Yeah, you probably see the old boy walk in and you just roll your eyes like, oh no, not this guy.
Yeah, and I usually know what he or she's going to say before they say it.
Yeah. Oh, that's
but let me say real quick also. So that after the meeting, when we met and you had opportunity to talk to other people, that's also a really valuable time too, because the council members, I mean, next to none of them will get up and leave. We'll all just stand up and take questions and talk. And same thing with the Division of Wildlife people. So that's another great opportunity if people come to the meetings to talk to the people one-on-one and express your concerns and your ideas. And so it's an excellent forum for that.
Yeah, and the chief actually came up to us and introduced herself. I'm sure she recognized some fresh faces there, and so that was very cool that she did that. And we had a couple minutes to chat with her.
Yeah, we probably chatted with her for 10-15 minutes.
Yeah.
Kendra, she's a smart lady, and it's been an excellent chief.
Yeah,
good.
I think that moving it around a little bit, I don't see a downside to that, at least to doing it for a little while to see what the attendance is and how many new faces and whatnot. I don't think that would be a bad idea, honestly.
Yeah, right. You can always change it back, right? If it doesn't work.
Right. Other states do it, so it wouldn't be a uncharted water. There are other states, game commissions and wildlife councils that do it. So
yeah, I guess it would just be a burden on you because you'd have to drive.
Yeah,
quite a bit.
So we had a gentleman. He just passed away, but he was on the council for 30 years. His name was Charlie Franks. I want to say 6 different governors appointed him to the council, Democrats and Republicans. And in 30 plus years, he never missed a meeting.
Wow.
So
that's
knock
dedication.
on wood. In 10 years, I've not missed a meeting. But
wow.
I mean, in my mind, you don't sign up for something like this if you're not going to attend.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so, I think that moving it around again might might give some people that wouldn't normally come an opportunity to come.
I agree with that.
No, I like that. So before we go, because I can tell we're kind of going down a little bit more. I do want to kind of hop back real quick to the rules and regs and just my last question about it. So you had stated that the DNR will appoint a law or a reg, and then you guys will and you guys will bicker upon it for a couple days or months or whatever it may take. How does somebody's voice like myself? How would the average Joe propose a regulation change or a law change to the right person? Like how would you suggest somebody doing that?
I think the step that you took last week would be a great one, because again, you were talking to the people that actually are going to make the proposal and the people that are going to approve it or disapprove it. So that's coming to council meeting. Come into the open houses, the district open houses that they have every year. You can talk to the biologists, talk to the staff. I really think so. That's kind of what got me involved in this. I was back in the 90s. So I'm going to date myself here. I'm going to be 62 years old in a couple of weeks. Back in the 90s, I was a big opponent of the Division of Wildlife. So I don't know how old you fellas are, but we had a period in the mid 90s where our deer herd got really high and then it got really low really quick. And a lot of it was due to hunting. And I was convinced that the Division of Wildlife's goal was to take us back to 1910, to extirpate deer from Ohio. I just felt like, man, they're just doing everything they can to kill every single deer in the state. And so I started to get involved in the process, and I started talking to biologists and different people within the Division of Wildlife. And the more I got to know these people, especially the deer program administrator was a guy named Mike Tonkovich. And Mike had that job for 30 years. He just retired last May. Mm-hmm. He had, in my opinion, the hardest job in the Division of Wildlife. And here's why. Anything to do with deer, any change that's made has opposition, and usually vocal and very animated opposition. So any type recommendation that he would make to the Wildlife Council for anything, somebody had a serious problem with it. Either the Farm Bureau had a problem with it, or this landowner, this guy, this bow hunter, this shotgun, this crossbow, whatever. And so there are not enough deer, too many deer. Everybody has an opinion about deer, right? And so that poor guy for 30 years just got his brains beat in by the general public, because no matter what he proposed, somebody was mad about it. And usually lots of people were mad about it. And, hunters, not so much anymore, but 15, 20, 30, 40 years ago, hunters, you couldn't appease them as far as number of deer went. I mean, it was always, there aren't enough deer. There's never too many. There can never be too many deer. And so that's not so much, I don't hear as much of that. Now it's more about quality deer hunting than it is about numbers. But for a long time, it was numbers. Well, the Division of Wildlife, they're charged with managing the deer for everybody, not just hunters. They're worried about motorists. They're worried about farmers. They're worried about people with gardens and azalea bushes and Christmas tree farming, all that stuff. So they've got to really look out for everyone. And then at the end of the day, they got to do what's best for the resource, the future of the resource. And so he was always getting beat up. And anyway, he and I became, I don't want to say great friends. We're pretty good friends. We're really good friends, actually. And the more I got to know him, the more I realized how hard his job was, the more sympathetic I got with him. And then I also realized that, he's a pretty smart guy, and he's, given us a lot of thought, and he's talked to a lot of other agencies, and he's seen what's worked in other states and what hasn't worked. And he started to, eventually over time, he beat me up with facts and figures. And then I really started to realize, and this is a problem that a lot of hunters have, is we tend to believe what we see with our eyes, right? So if we go out 3 or 4 hunts in a row and don't see a deer, the deer are all dead. They're all gone. There just aren't anymore. Well, that's not true. They might be 3 ridges over. They're just not in front of you.
Yeah.
But if the hunting on your property for whatever reason isn't as good as it used to be or whatever, you tend to think that the whole state's like that. And real quick, I'm getting a bunch of texts. Are they coming up on your?
No,
you're good. You're good.
Okay, good. Yeah. All of a sudden, I got like 12 texts in a row. I'm not related to this. But anyway, so I started to learn that, hey, you know what? What I see with my eyes is anecdotal. And you got to look at trends, and you got to look at the big picture. You got to look at data, and you got to look at other things, and kind of piece it all together. And the more I got to thinking like that, the more sympathetic I got. And I'm not going to say that, I still give them heck about all kinds of stuff, but overall, I think that the people that are in charge do a pretty damn good job based on, the information that they're presented with.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. No, yeah. I respect that.
Mm-hmm. And that was one thing that we talked about not long ago was, like when you guys went down to the meeting, it's like those meetings are not about the white-tailed deer and what's going on with white-tailed deer hunters. It's about everything wildlife in Ohio.
Even down to the bugs,
bees.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
So it's
Frogs.
In our minds, it's all about the deer, but as a the wildlife council as a whole, it's not just about deer; it's about all of wildlife.
Right. Mm-hmm. But I will tell you though that deer drive the bus in Ohio. Mm-hmm. Walleye, Lake Erie walleye, and deer drive the bus.
Yep.
I mean, if you took those two things away, Ohio, we would be hurting.
Yeah.
So that is true, and deer probably are the most talked about resource in Ohio for sure.
I would agree.
No, I mean, it's common knowledge. The whitetail deer is the most commonly talked about, commonly hunted critter there is. I would argue in the United States.
Probably. For sure.
Widespread.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, it's gonna raise an eyebrow if somebody thinks that it's on the decline or upcline or whatever.
Quality, whatever the case is. Yeah.
Mike, you had kind of mentioned earlier about, quantity versus quality. But, in the 90s, you had mentioned that they were probably managing more for quantity. Do you feel that we are still managing for quantity versus quality, even though that we, I would say in the last year or two, we've heard this like giant, rebuttal about the quality decrease in Ohio. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh man, I have a lot of thoughts on that. So I'll try to paraphrase my thoughts or condense my thoughts. So 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, it was all about numbers. We don't have enough deer. We need more deer. The last couple of years, maybe 3, 4, 5 years or so, starting to hear a lot more about quality. So very few people complaining about not enough deer. Now their complaints are our age structure is screwed up. Our ratios, buck to doe ratios are messed up. Our age structure is messed up, which is a very difficult thing to manage. You know what I'm saying? It's a very fluent kind of variable, and it's a very difficult thing to manage. So I don't hear a lot of people complain today about numbers, like unless you live here where I'm at in Southeast Ohio, like they did, 20, 30 years ago. Now it seems to be more not enough big deer or not enough old deer or not enough whatever. And of course, there's a lot of reasons for that. I'm sure we'll get into that. But I think it's sort of fluid, for lack of a better word. So it was a big, numbers were the big deal 20, 30, 40 years ago. Today, it seems to be, quality and age structure.
Mm-hmm. So what do you, so people are talking about it. Obviously it's been brought up. So in my opinion, I'm a firm believer in that, if people are talking about it, people are seeing it, it's probably happening. Like people aren't just making up that they're not seeing the quality deer that they used to. Heck, I can sit here and talk about hunting experiences in the past, even 10 years ago, where, it almost seemed like 10, 15 years ago, me as a dumb high school kid could put a SD trail camera in some woodlot somewhere and a 150 would walk by. And now I might have to hunt and look hard.
Struggle to find that.
For a 150 now. I'm not going to sit here and argue that our hunters haven't gotten any better because it's just facts.
That's for sure.
But I don't know. I don't know if it's, I'm sure you probably don't want to get into the corn pile drone debate, but
No, I will gladly get into that with you.
Here we are. I'll give you my opinion. I think that especially the combo between the corn pile and the cell camera, I think those two combos is a detriment to the quality of the herd, and frankly we're not shooting any does because of it. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, a guy would throw out a corn pile. For one, corn piles weren't even really that popular back when I was younger. I'm not sure when that transition changed.
Or at least not in our area.
We've talked about that quite a bit on the podcast about how when we were younger, like nobody really hunted corn piles. And if you did, it was kind of voodoo, you know, it was kind of shamed upon. Nobody, you know, people looked down upon you if you were hunting over corn because it was quote unquote cheating, even though it was legal. Like guys just didn't do it. You know, I would argue now that if you're not baiting and your neighbor is, good luck. You know, so Mike, I actually own 32 acres. My wife and I purchased 32 acres. I'm only 30 years old. So as you know, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but as a 30-year-old buying 32 acres, like it just shows to you and anyone else that may be listening to this how important trying to isolate myself away from everybody else is. And I run a gravity feeder on my property year round, and I keep that thing full year round. Do I hunt over it? No, but my thought process is I'm trying to keep the younger deer alive on my property so that way I can target the 4, 5, 6-year-old deer in the future, because I feel that, you know, my neighbor's baiting and he may not have the same viewpoints that I do, and he's gonna shoot that, you know, let's just call him the dumb 3-year-old. That's, you know, that 130-inch 3-year-old that has the potential, you know, and that might be a big deer to him. But I think the problem is where, you know, cell cameras 10, 15 years ago were very expensive. We're talking $500. Now you can go to Walmart and get a 2-pack for $89. So everybody and their brother is like, why should I have an SD card when I can get a cell camera? We're going to throw this corn pile up. We're going to put this cell camera on it. Oh, I've got 15 does coming to my corn pile every night, but I've got this 130, and then, oh, wait, I got this 150-incher showing up, you know, at night or whatever. So I'm not going to shoot a doe over this corn pile because there's a possibility that I can shoot that buck, you know, in the future. And then before you know it, you know, it's late season and nobody wants to hunt in the cold or whatever. And you know, I think that's why the doe numbers have skyrocketed. We travel out of state quite a bit too, and I just kind of want to give you a background of, you know, even more of how serious the resource is to me specifically and us in general. I killed 7 bucks in 2 years in the last 2 years. Now, granted, obviously different states. I'm not killing multiple bucks in one state. So I'm traveling around, you know, to 3 to 4 states every year, specifically hunting whitetail. And, you know, I'm not trying to say that I see a lot because obviously, Mike, you have much more experience and, you know, many more years than I have spending behind the bow. But in my short, you know, 10 to 15 years of hunting, I can honestly look at you and say that I feel that the quality is going down. Can I blame it on corn piles? Can I blame it on cell cameras? Can I blame it on drones? I'm not sure, but we do have a problem where access is unheard of. You can't get access, which is the biggest problem there is in the state of Ohio, in my opinion. Why do you think I bought 32 acres? It's so I could have a place to hunt. You know, it's like I have a guaranteed place to hunt. I might not be able to chase a booner every year, but if I can go behind my house and shoot, you know, a doe and, you know, a 140 that walks by, I'm going to be tickled pink every single year. And, you know, I guess I'm rambling a little bit, Mike, and I'm not venting at you. I'm just talking in general that like I have a deep concern for the resource because 10 years ago, stupid, you know, 15, 20-year-old Matt could basically walk in blind and stumble upon a 150, it seemed like. And now, with all the resources that we have, all the technology, all the knowledge that I've gained, it's hard. I mean, it's extremely hard. And I don't know if it's just a lack of access or what it is.
Smaller parcels.
I mean, I don't know if you guys have any thoughts.
That's something that we've been trying to work out is what is making the difference, because there is clearly a difference.
Yeah.
In our opinion.
Well, guys, I should have been taking notes there because there's a lot of stuff in there I wanted to comment on.
I'm sorry, I rambled.
No, that's okay. No, that's all right. It might take me a while to address everything you said. So a couple things. So first thing you touched on was yourself. It's what you're seeing on your acreage where you hunt, which again, that's anecdotal. That's what you're seeing. Now, I would throw back at you. You're saying that it was better 10 years ago. There were more trophy bucks walking the woods of Ohio 10 years ago than there are today. And you're basing that on what you see and hear on social media, people you talk to, and what you see with your eyes, right?
I would say it'd be personal experience and just people in my core, like my core hunting group.
Yes. So let me throw some examples out there for you, and a little bit about me. And again, and I'm just like you weren't saying it to brag about yourself. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about me and hunting. So I have more entries in the state record book than anyone in Ohio. I started writing for North American Whitetail Magazine 35 years ago, Ohio Game and Fish. I started interviewing people. I've hunted whitetails all over the country. I've been a student of the game for longer than any of you guys have been alive. So I'm not saying that to put you down. I'm just telling you that I really paid attention for a really long time. So the reason I tell you that is it gives me a different perspective than what you have. So let me throw some things out there first. Okay, so statistically, and these are numbers, these aren't what I see, you see, our circle of friends or whatever. Right now is about as good a time to kill a trophy buck in Ohio as it has ever been. Now, that being said, the entries in our state record book tend to mirror the total harvest 2 years removed. So bucks that went in the Big Buck Club this year, the Buckeye Big Buck Club that went in this year were actually killed in 2020. Most of them were killed in 2024. There's no statute of limitations, but most of them were killed in 24. They were scored in 25 because that's the dry 60 days. Then it gets entered in 26. So we're 2 years behind. So the record book entries tends to mirror the kill. Now, people tell me all the time, yeah, but I know so-and-so, and he's got a whole wall full of Buckeye Big Bucks, but he don't care nothing about no record book. Well, let me tell you real quick. First, whenever someone tells me that, I say, no, you know a guy with a wall full of big deer. The difference between a Boone and Crockett and a Buckeye Big Buck and a Pope and Young is that one has been officially scored and one has not. I've been an official scorer for almost 35 years. I can't tell you how many giant, 180s that were brought to me, and when I taped them, they were 155s. And so a lot of people don't have a good working knowledge of the Boone and Crockett scoring system or even the Buckmaster system. So whenever someone tells me that, I say, no, you know a guy with a bunch of big deer, but you don't know a guy with, 50 entries in the Big Buck Club. Now, that's not to say that there aren't some people that do. And there's definitely a lot of people out there that have killed big bucks that don't want anything, they want to fly under the radar. They don't want any attention because I can tell you from experience, a lot of times attention, it can cause you harm. There's a lot of unintended consequences of that. So, but getting back to my point in all this, so statistically, when you look at record book entries, so Ohio, and I made a post on Facebook about this, you guys may have seen it, where Ohio, in the last 10 years, we're number 2 for record book entries in Boone and Crockett, which is North American big game, right behind Wisconsin, and just barely. We're way ahead of Iowa. We're way ahead of Illinois. We're ahead of Kansas. And nobody scores out there. Nobody cares. People intentionally, that's baloney. The hunters in Iowa are no different than the hunters in Mansfield or Athens or Ashland or whatever. You can't tell me that there are certain states where the guys all got together and said, hey, we're not going to enter our deer in the record book. And especially when you start talking about Boone and Crockett's, because you're talking about a really big deer. And when a deer is really big, most people want to know, what does it score? I mean, the 130s, 140s, 150s, a lot of those never get officially taped because, a guy's already killed 4, 5, or 10 or whatever. But when you start talking about 170s and 195s and the giant bucks, very few of those slip through the cracks because people want to know, hey, what did that deer score? And so statistically, when you look at Ohio and you compare us to every other state in the Midwest or Canadian province for that matter, we're still doing pretty good. And let me tell you what I think is happening. So you touched on access being a problem. I could not agree with you more. You are preaching to the choir there. I mean, that to me is probably the most serious issue facing the future of hunting. And I use myself as an example. When I'm not from Athens. I went to college at Ohio University. I came here 44 years ago and liked it so well I never left. When I first moved to this area, I started knocking on doors. And back then, probably 50% of the farmers that I would talk to, come on, no problem. Today, it's maybe, like you said, 1 out of 100. And if someone does let you hunt, you may as well go hunt public because they've got 100 different people already hunting the property. So it's almost impossible. A couple years ago, I looked on Onyx maps in my area, and in about a 5-county area here in Southeast Ohio, I could identify 30,000 acres that at one time I had permission to walk on. Not necessarily turkey hunt, deer hunt. I crow hunted, I fox hunted, I coyote hunted, I groundhog hunted back when we had groundhogs. I grouse hunted, I duck hunted. I did a lot of stuff. And so, but there were 30,000 acres over the last 44 years that I knocked on the door, got permission to hunt, that today I'm out. And I'm out because that land has been bought or has been leased for recreational purposes. And that's a serious problem. And I don't have an answer for it, but I can tell you that that's not good for the future of hunting. But getting back to your point about hunting being better 10 years ago, we had over 100 more entries go in the state record book this year than we did last year. And some giant bucks from all over the state. And here's what I think is happening. I think that what we're seeing is so much of that ground that I just mentioned, that you mentioned, that's now off limits to the average hunter, more deer are slipping through the cracks and are making it to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. More deer because so much land is off limits to the masses. So I'll give you some examples to when I killed my first deer in 1978. When I first started hunting in the late 70s and early 80s, deer drives were a big deal. And I'm not saying that people do them today. And I know the Amish and there's some other folks that still like to do that. But personally, down here in my neck of the woods, I don't see that very often. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's still people driving deer, just not a lot.
Yeah.
Those fellas and gals were deer hunters. They went out, and again, they wanted a Boone and Crockett. They wanted a button buck too. They wanted a deer. And a lot of 4 points and 6 points and 1.5-year-old bucks and 2.5-year-old bucks that are today getting a pass on all that ground that's tied up, they used to get shot 30 or 40 years ago by that militia of Orange, the pumpkin people that would line up on one side of a property and drive to the other side and kill everything. A lot of the big bucks too, that's how they died, because forced movement, right? So if you tried to hunt that buck on his own terms, he's really hard to get close to. But if an army of guys in Carhartts kick him up and push him to you, you've got a pretty decent chance at him. And so I would argue and say it was harder for a deer to make it to 4, 5, 6 years old 30 or 40 years ago than it is today, because of what I just described to you. Now, there's other issues involved in that because of this trophy craze. And I'll be the first person to admit that I was part of the problem, still am part of the problem. You know, antlers, big antlers. Everybody wants big antlers. So a lot of genetically inferior deer are getting a pass. And a lot of, 5-year-old 6 points and 7 points and, there's scrub bucks or whatever. Those deer are doing a lot of breeding. And so I don't know how much longer that was going to be sustainable, where we were going to be quote unquote high grading. And I know that does carry over 50% of the genes and all that stuff. I've heard all those other arguments, but it can't be good if you're just targeting the very best. Because, in nature, the way nature designs things, the best of the best is what survives. And passes on the genes and perpetuates the species. Whereas a trophy hunter, that's what we're targeting. Coyotes and bears and mountain lions, they don't give a shit. They don't give a darn about antlers.
No, you're all right.
Pardon my French there, guys. But they don't care about that. They're just whatever they can catch, right? But hunters, humans, we're enthralled with these big antlers. And so, and again, I'm as guilty as anyone. But and I will also tell you, I'm probably getting back to the corn piles and the cell cameras and all that stuff. So the area of the state that I live in is mostly wooded, very little agriculture down here. If you took away the number one crutch, I don't say crutch, but the number one, what's the word I'm looking for? The number one device, or whatever you want to call it, or weapon, or whatever that I have, is a cellular trail camera. A trail camera, but a cellular trail camera. And that's because it's my eyes in the woods. I don't have fields to glass. I don't have places where I can really keep an eye on the deer. So without trail cameras, I don't know what's there. When I look at my personal history, I killed my first buckeye big buck in 1991. I killed my second buckeye big buck in 1997. I killed my third buckeye big buck in 1999. Then I went 15 years in a row and killed one every year. What changed? Trail cameras.
Technology.
That was the difference. That was the biggest. It wasn't corn piles. It wasn't crossbows. It wasn't drones. It was trail cameras, because I was able to find deer that I would have never known were there without it. I used to go out and just sit over scrapes and pinch points and rubs and hope that something good came by, and the trail camera allowed me to find the deer that I was interested in, and then figure out how to kill them.
Mm-hmm.
No, I
would 100% agree.
No, I agree with the trail camera argument. I guess my go ahead.
I got a question. So you mentioned two different scoring systems that we use: the Big Buck, Buckeye. I'm sorry,
Boone and Crockett. Yes,
Boone and Crockett and Buckmaster, right?
No,
so,
yes,
big Buckeye Big Buck Club.
Yeah, Buckeye Big Buck follows the Boone and Crockett
Yeah,
standard.
they follow Boone and Crockett.
Yeah,
so,
but it's significantly smaller. I think you only have to do 140 to get into the
so Buckeye Big Buck is 140, 160 typical, non-typical. Boone and Crockett is 170, 195.
Yeah.
Okay.
So deer has to be considerably bigger to make Boone and Crockett and then Pope and Young is smaller. That's the archery world record.
125.
That's I think 125, 150.
Yeah.
So I got a question. We had Jason Thomas on a couple years ago, and he shot a 210, and then so it was a panel score then, and they determined it to 138. So somebody and this is probably a unique situation, right? But why would you want to shoot something that's a 210 and then you get it scored as a 138? Wouldn't that deter people from wanting to even get a buck like that scored? Because you know, and like I said, this is probably a unique situation, but it could be, you know, a deterrent for other people that would shoot something of that size or close to it to even not want to do it then.
Yeah, so the Buckmaster's scoring system, the full credit scoring system, there's no question it's more equitable for the deer. The problem is the Boone and Crockett scoring system's been around for 100 years. You know, it's been around since the 1800s. And so it's the gold standard. And the Boone and Crockett system is all about symmetry. So that Jason Thomas buck, I'm very familiar with that deer, and it was a giant. And it was crucified by the Boone and Crockett scoring system. That was a total injustice. And I don't blame him for, you know, I don't think he even entered it. He may have entered it. No, he didn't enter anything other than. So another example, you fellas are probably familiar with the C.J. Alexander buck, that great big buck that was poached down in Clinton County.
Yeah.
So I green scored that. So every year I get multiple calls, usually in November. Hey, I think I just killed the next state record. And I'm always like, yeah, okay, send me a picture. Because it's, you know, usually a great big buck, but it's not the state record. Well, that boy's mother, who lived in Tennessee, called me. And she said, my son killed a deer. She said, and I think it's the next state record. I said, okay, well, send me a picture. She sent me a picture. My jaw literally dropped. I mean, oh my gosh, look at that. And so I've been a scorer for years. People bring the deer to me to score. I drove from Athens to Clinton County to go score that deer because I just wanted to see it in person. And it had a common base time that the Boone and Crockett scoring system the Boone and Crockett club absolutely would have thrown it out. So I scored it typical and non-typical, green scored it. It was never officially scored because obviously the kid poached it. And I had no reason to suspect anything when I first started talking to him.
Right.
But anyway, it had 2 tines on the left side that were common base. But if you look at the Boone and Crockett standard, it says it can be common base typical, common base non-typical. So I scored it as a common base typical, and I came up with like 206, which would have been our new state record. And then non-typical, I scored it the other way, is like 232. But I was preparing, when I thought it was a legitimate deer, I was preparing to make a case to the Buckeye Big Buck Club Board of Trustees that, hey, you need to score this as a typical, and here's why. And there are several examples. If you look, you can look it up online, but the Van Lith buck, Kurt Van Lith, killed a giant buck in Minnesota, and Pope and Young has it at 197. It's got common base tines. Our state record tied. We have 2 state record typicals. They're tied: the Brad German buck and the Bill Contras buck. The Bill Contras buck has a common base point or 2 points on one side. So the difference in value had that young man killed that deer legitimately, the difference in value between a 206 typical and a 230 non-typical was $250,000. Yeah. So I was going to make a case to him for him that, hey, this needs to be entered in the Buckeye Big Buck Club as a typical, and here's why. You have 2 other examples. And if he wanted to sue the club, he would have a legitimate gripe, because he'd say, wait a minute, you had these other 2 bucks, you saw it this way, but for these guys, why not for me? And so anyway, that Jason Thomas buck, it's one of those giant bucks that the Boone and Crockett scoring system is not fair to at all.
Yeah. I wonder, is there, Mike, see, I don't, to be honest with you, I probably have 6 or 7 deer, maybe 8 that would go big buck, Ohio Big Buck Club. But I think I only have one entered, which I think was my first.
As do most people, correct.
Yeah. So do you feel that it's a generational thing, or because I'm not involved with it, most of my friends that are big deer killers, they don't score their deer. I mean, the problem is everybody knows how to score a deer. Like everybody knows how to get within, let's say, plus or minus 5 inches.
So, close.
You know.
Enough.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, like that's a fair statement. And you know, do you think it's a generational thing where these, let's say that these guys that have built their wealth, whatever it may be, have put themselves in the right situation to buy ground. They're significantly older than to all of us sitting here that are 30. Do you think that they're the people that are entering these deer, or do you think there is the younger generation?
No, so you just touched on something. A lot of people enter their first Buckeye Big Buck and then never enter another one.
Yeah.
That's pretty common because they go to the banquet, they get a certificate, they go through all the stuff, and then they see their name in print and all that, and they're good with it. Some people, like myself, I continue as I kill them, I've continued to enter them. But I know people that do have walls full of Buckeye Big Buck Club bucks that were never entered. I'm not saying there's nobody. I'm just saying that the majority of people that tell me that don't know what they're looking at.
Yeah.
But that being said, I would argue it's probably the other way around. I think there's more emphasis on scoring today than there was 20, 30, 40 years ago. Way more emphasis. And there's way more scorers also. So like the Buckeye Big Buck Club 30 years ago had maybe 35, 40 scores statewide. There's like over 100 now. So that's the other thing. If you have to travel to get your deer scored, you probably won't.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of times when you look at county data, that can be misleading because if there are 3 scores in one county and there's some isolated county that doesn't have a score within 3 counties of it, chances are a guy's not going to travel 100 miles or 50 miles to get his deer scored, where if all he has to do is go right around the corner and, there's a score on every block.
No, I just find it very interesting. I'm not 100%. I respect your opinion. I find it very interesting that you feel that there are more people getting their deer scored. And statistically speaking, you don't feel that way. I mean, it's on paper, but I would argue that in my core group of guys and I talk to, I talk to quite a bit of guys, not just in our area either. I mean, all over the state of Ohio that are my age that do not score deer, and they say that Boone and Crockett's nothing but a money grab. So I just find that very interesting that you. I shouldn't say you. Statistically speaking, that it's the other way around.
Yeah.
No. So again, I'm not trying to be argumentative, but I'm the records chairman for the Big Buck Club. All score sheets come to me, so I have data.
Yeah.
A couple guys. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
I have mountains of score sheets that can prove my point. And so, I would disagree with you. Like I said, because especially not necessarily Buckeye Big Bucks or Pope and Youngs, but Boone and Crockett's. When you start talking about a Boone and Crockett, which 170-inch typical is a really rare deer, and 195-inch typical is, I don't care where you live, that's a big buck. It's a giant buck.
Yeah.
And when people kill a deer of that caliber, the vast majority of those people, not all, but most of them want to know, what does he score? And most people will only kill one of those in their lifetime. And so if they kill one of those in their lifetime, they're probably going to enter. And I'll also tell you this, there are twice as many Boone and Crockett qualifying entries in the Buckeye Big Buck Club in our state record book than there are in Boone and Crockett. There are twice as many deer that would make Boone and Crockett that are in Buckeye Big Buck that are not in Boone and Crockett from Ohio. So when you compare our records to like some other states, we actually look really good. I mean, really, really good, because the gold standard in Ohio for record book organizations is Buckeye Big Buck. There are like 22,000 entries in the Buckeye Big Buck going back to 1958. There were almost 500 bucks that went in the club this year, just this past year. And so I would argue that, in the circle of people that that could be. I mean, and I know a lot of guys that kill big deer that don't, but I'm just telling you, when you take a population of 11.7 million people across there, that doesn't pan out.
Yeah. That's very possible.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a fact.
I'm starting to wonder if it's like, granted, we could go down a million rabbit holes, but I'm just talking through my mind. I'm starting to wonder if it's like just a bunch of randoms, because like I guess Mike, and I understand that you probably have that same core group of friends that we have.
Mm-hmm.
So we are so passionate about chasing the whitetail that we have, Zach Kime, for example, dude's got like 5 or 6 170 pluses, has never entered in. He killed a 213
and some change.
213 this year, and like never. He's like, no, I'm not doing that. So once again, like, I'm not arguing with the stats. I just find it so interesting that, I mean, I know I've said this already, but you're talking to a guy that travels to 3 or 4 states every single year, has multiple friends in different states, multiple friends all over Ohio, all of them killing big deer. I'm talking 150, 160, 170s every year, and not one person's like, I'm not entering it officially. I just find it so interesting. Yeah.
Well, and again, I'm not doubting you. I'm just telling you that it doesn't. The data suggests otherwise.
It says I'm wrong, and I get that. I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can leave it at that, because I could sit here and argue all day long, and I understand.
No, it's okay, but again, in my social circles, I have a lot of friends that kill big giant bucks and don't enter them. I have a lot of friends that kill giant bucks and do enter them.
Yeah.
So, I know both, but I'm just going to tell you that in my experience, the great big bucks, some of them, like your friend that killed the 213 or whatever, I'm not denying that. I'm not saying that's not true, but he's an anomaly. He's not the average guy. The average guy that kills a 213 takes the time to get it scored, because that's for 99.9% of the people that hunt, that's the buck of 10 lifetimes.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, so for an example, on a good year in the state of Ohio, we will kill 20 200-inch plus non-typical bucks, and maybe 3 or 4 180-inch typicals. I laugh at this. So you guys have probably seen this, and I'm not picking on people from southern states, but states that don't have the quality that we have here in the Midwest, Alabama, Mississippi, North Carolina. I can't tell you how many guys from the South that see 180-inch typicals every time they go out. And what they see is 140, and they think it's because they don't know what they're looking at again.
Yeah.
And, I call it a 140 is a North Carolina 180. And it's because they have no idea what they're talking about. But a 180-inch typical on a good year, if we kill 3 or 4 of those in the state, that's a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a heck of a lot. Those are rare. That's the other thing, fellas, you guys need to understand. There's an expectation, too, that can be unrealistic. And I blame a lot of it on social media. So let's talk about age structure. So 30 years ago, so you weren't frowned upon for killing a 4-point 30 years ago. You killed a buck 30 years ago. You got a buck, right?
Right.
Yeah.
What happens if you post a proud picture of yourself holding a 1.5-year-old 4-point on social media? What happens to
You're
you
getting
today?
roast
shamed.
Yeah.
You get crucified, right?
Yeah.
Right? So, so again, that's a cultural thing. That's an expectation thing. And so you have to remember also, how about all the giant bucks that were killed 20, 30 years ago, 40, 50 years ago by some farmer who, let's nail that up to the barn roof, nail on the barn wall or whatever. I ain't got another record book. I ain't paying none of that stuff. And so those people have always been with us. I'm just telling you that on average, when a buck gets to be really big in today's world, the average guy, it's a once in a lifetime event for the vast majority of people that hunt. And so let's say there are 350,000 deer hunters in Ohio. And we kill, that are officially entered, 20 a year that are over 200 inches and 3 a year over 180 inches, not counting those handful of guys that don't enter them. I mean, let's say there's twice as many guys that don't enter them, 40 out of 400,000. You know what I mean? That's a big deal. People start talking about 200-inch deer, like, 200. That 200-inch deer is I don't care where you live.
Giant.
I mean, I don't care what state or province you live in. That's a giant buck.
Yeah. No, you won't get any argument from us here.
Yeah.
I don't have a 200 on the wall.
No, and when Kime brought his up here, like, it just dwarfs everything else. Like, a 200 is just something out of this world, essentially.
Yeah.
It's a genetic freak. I mean, there's so many things that have to happen right. There's so many deer that. So you were talking about your property, the 30 acres you had. So I was blessed for almost 30 years. I didn't own, but I owned a lot of it. But I controlled about an 800-acre block here in Southeast Ohio, and I took a very simplistic view when I first took that over. Man, all I got to do is keep the masses out of here, and I'm going to have a Boone and Crockett behind every bush. Because after all deer has to do is get to be 3, 4, 5 years old, or 6 years old. He's going to have a giant rack. So that's when I started working on my PhD in the Wildlife Management School of Hard Knocks, because I make like every mistake you can make. And so what I learned was there you can have in wildlife resource management. This applies to fish also. You can have quantity and you can have quality. You cannot have both. You can have a lot of deer or you can have some big deer. You can't have a lot of big deer. I don't care. They don't tolerate each other. They just don't. They spread out. And so people talk about, I manage this 100 acre. You don't manage baloney. With 100 acres, that deer could be 4 miles away. So back in the late 90s, I let the Division of Wildlife, they were doing a fawn mortality study. And I let them radio collar fawns on that 800 acre block that I controlled. And what they did is, it was pretty cool. As part of this deal, they would dart them with a tranquilizer dart. This was in February and March. They would put a transmitter into the birth canal. When the doe would give birth, that transmitter would drop out, would start to emit a signal. And within 5 minutes or 3 minutes, it would emit a signal and they would know exactly where that fawn was. And so the first day of a fawn's life, it doesn't go anywhere. It just basically just lays there. And they would find that fawn. They would put a lifetime collar on it that would expand as the fawn would age. And what they were doing a fawn mortality study. They were trying to figure out how many fawns hit the ground versus how many fawns make it to the huntable population in the fall. One of the male fawns that they radio collared on my property behind my old house was killed by a friend of mine 10 miles away from my house, behind his house, 4.5 years later. It was 10 miles away. I killed a buck in 1998, or excuse me, in 2018, that a friend of mine was getting trail camera photos of 4.9 miles away from where I killed it all fall. He was getting pictures of it. And that's counting all these hills. If you flattened it out, it was probably like 6 or 7 miles away. So people who talk about managing their property for big bucks, unless you control thousands and thousands of acres, what you're doing is you're improving the habitat, which we can talk about that in just a second also, to try to make it more attractive for deer and for big deer, and hope that a few of them slip through the cracks. That's the best you can do. Just hope, because those darn things travel. And they don't tolerate each other too. When they get to be 4, 5, 6 years old, they become very antisocial and they spread out. And you can't keep them on a postage stamp.
There's no argument about that from us.
We have data that backs that up too. We've had cameras miles apart on different farms and we have the same bucks on them. So we know, like in Matt's example, he's not going to be able to keep 30 deer. Deer on his 30 acres.
I'm not that naive to say that I bought 30 acres and now I'm going to kill big bucks. It's not possible.
So real quick, speaking of 30 acres, so I have several different properties that I can hunt here in Southeast Ohio. My boys own some ground. I own some ground. We have exclusive permission on a couple different farms. And so what I see from year to year is that one property, for whatever reason, so here's something else. If you're a trophy hunter, if you're looking for when I say a trophy, a 5, 6, 7-year-old buck, the difference between a great place to hunt and a not so great place to hunt is usually just one deer, right? And so there, for whatever reason, there are some properties that produce every 3, 4, 5 years, or randomly a big buck will be in that area for whatever reason. He slips through the cracks. There are some properties that seem to produce good bucks every year. I have one property in particular that I have. One of my best friends owns it. It's 200 acres. I've hunted it. I've had permission to hunt it since the 80s. It used to produce, we used to see and get pictures of really nice bucks every year for 25 years. There has not been a good buck on that property since 2017. And the reason is, at least the only reason I can come up with, is the demographics of the neighborhood have changed. So it used to be surrounded by landowners that let people hunt, but they were mostly just in for gun season, gun week, and not a lot of bow hunting or whatever. Now, the one property next to it on the north is leased by guys from North Carolina. The property to the east is leased by guys from Pennsylvania. The property to the south is owned by some Amish from Northeast Ohio. The property of the west is guys, I think, from North Carolina or something. And ever since the demographics of that neighborhood changed, that property has not produced what I would consider a trophy buck ever since then. And prior to that, it did every year.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the flip side of that, right here where I live, I own 50 acres behind my house, not a big, and it's part of probably a 700 or 800 acre block of deer habitat. And going into last fall, and these deer all died, all 6 of them died during the HD outbreak. But I had more really good bucks on this 50 acres last year than any place I've ever hunted in my life. I had a 180-inch typical that I found dead back there that would have been a top 3 buck typical in the history of Ohio, or not history, and it would have been the biggest typical in the history of Athens County, and it probably for sure would have been a top 5 in the state. He died on August the 15th. That's not here, but anyway, and there were 5 other really good deer, and I have no explanation. Nothing really changed. My neighbors didn't change. The hunting pressure didn't change. There wasn't some new law or just for whatever reason, there were 6 good bucks back here this year, and I don't know why. And so my point in all that is the properties that we hunt tend to produce good bucks different years for different reasons, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah. No, I understand that completely. The properties go in cycles, acorn production, crop rotation.
Right.
I mean, we can go on we can talk for an hour on why a property won't or will not produce every year, or, and there are some properties that will. I like the property that you killed that buck on. Every time long story short, there was a property, Mike, that I lost. Landowner died. Family's like, we're not allowing hunting anymore. I promise you, if you would manage, if I had access to manage it, or if you had access to manage it, or somebody with some common sense had access to manage this property, I would bet my paycheck that you would kill a 160 plus
showstopper every year,
or at least have an opportunity. You would miss or have you would have an opportunity at a 160 plus every single year. Yeah, and unfortunately, that property can't hunt it anymore. But I understand. I understand. Do I feel that I'm going to kill a 140 behind my house every year? No, it's just not possible. But at least I can say that I have the 30 acres to hunt. And you got to remember, we're in northeastern Ohio, so that land's a little bit more expensive than we want to admit. So,
No, this is where I live here in southeast Ohio. This is the final frontier. I mean, their land prices compared to where you guys are. Oh yeah, it's very, very reasonable down here. Yeah. So I don't know if I can turn my camera here, but I'm just going to kind of pan around this room here real quick, so you can kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about. So anyway, I'm in my man cave here. There are 61 Buckeye big bucks hanging in this room. Okay. Probably 25% of them came off of 40 acres, the right 40 acres, just like you described. And let me tell you about that 40 acres. That 40 acres was close to town, right on the edge of town. This is a college town. Ohio University is here in Athens. It was an area where a lot of like deans and senior people with Ohio University, many estates, 15 acres, 20 acres, 30 acres, very little access. Next to nobody would let you hunt. We had, when I say we, my sons and I had exclusive access to 40 acres, was right in the middle of that. And the sole difference maker was deer could get old there. They just could, because it was surrounded by no hunting, not hunting pressure, no hunting. And so we lost that property. The landowner died. His daughter never liked hunting, blah, 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 blah. Now nobody hunts that anymore. But I will also tell you, though, that property started to tail off the last 5+ years that we hunted there. The quality of hunting really started to diminish because on the far end of the section was a housing development put in, really nice houses. But there were several people with feeders in their backyards. Matter of fact, I know of one guy that killed 2 bucks out of a swing set in a backyard that bordered this sanctuary that we had. And the only thing that changed was that neighborhood changed, because that housing development went in there and they started letting people hunt in their backyards. And of course they were baiting the deer off. And I know you guys are probably going to want to talk about this, but corn piles and baiting and all that stuff. I have probably been victimized by small landowners baiting deer off of property that I either owned or had control of than anybody in the history of Ohio. I mean, I can't say that for a fact, but I'm just telling you, It's happened to me a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, an awful lot. So, and I feel for the people that, that are upset about that.
Mike, I'm just going to ask you, what are your thoughts on dating? Like if somebody had a gun to your head and said yes or no, what are you picking?
Well, I have an unfair advantage. When I say I have an unfair advantage, by most people's standards, I have a lot of places to hunt. By most people's standards, I plant food plots. I have access to equipment. I can, you know what I mean? I can manipulate the ground that I hunt and to improve the hunting. So I have an unfair advantage over the average blue collar guy that hunts. So my perspective might be a little jaded. But what I try to do is I try to look at the baiting debate through the eyes of everyone. Not just me, not just you, not just the guys who want to kill the 180s, and not just the people that want the button bucks. And I try to look at it from everybody's perspective. So I'll ask you guys a couple questions. We'll talk about baiting.
Yeah. Let's do
so states that allowed baiting at one time allowed baiting and have taken it away. When they did that, was their objective met? Did things get better, or did disease stop? Did anything happen? And I'll give you the answers to the test first. It's happened twice. Wisconsin, about 20 years ago, took away baiting. And you can argue and say, yeah, Wisconsin's killed more Boone and Crockett's in the last 10 years than any state in the union. But they also have more Boone and Crockett's than any state or province. And that goes back for 100 years. Wisconsin's always produced big bucks. The other state would be Michigan. So Michigan has outlawed baiting twice. Michigan outlawed baiting 20 some years ago because of a bovine tuberculosis outbreak. Then they brought it back. The reason they brought it back is they realized that the real culprit was their deer densities were too high and their hunters couldn't kill enough deer without bait. Then CWD came in 2018, I believe 16 or 18, they outlawed it again. Now it's back in the legislature. And so the reason that I asked Kevin Mullet, who was on your show, a friend of mine saw your show, said, hey, you need to see this. They had this guy on there talking about it. So I watched that show with Kevin, and I really wanted to talk about some of the things that Kevin said, and maybe some of the things that were even said at that Wildlife Council meeting last week that also need to be brought out about baiting in general, hunting in Michigan and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So Kevin, and I like Kevin, by the way, he's a very nice young man, and he is, for the most part, doing the right thing. He's passionate about this stuff. His conviction, I believe he thinks he thinks he sees a problem and he's trying to do something about it. I really have a lot of respect for him. I think he's a bright young guy. I don't disagree with everything he's saying, but I have had these conversations with him, and like I'm going to do with you guys, I'm going to try to throw out the flip side of that coin. So getting back to Michigan. So Kevin's group, and I can't think, what's the name of that group that they have? It's they've hired a lobbyist.
Hunters Advocate of Ohio.
Yeah.
That's it. Okay. So those guys have hired a lobbyist to get in the ear of our politicians in Columbus. And the reason they're doing that is they feel like they're not getting the response they want from the Division of Wildlife and the Wildlife Council. So what I've told Kevin is, that is really, that is dangerous. That's a slippery slope. And here's why. When you ask the legislature to get involved in something, they often do. And when they get involved in something, they are beholden to special interest groups like the Farm Bureau, like the insurance company, like other people that help them get elected, their constituents, the gardeners and the Christians, and all the other people that want to see a lot of deer killed. So in Michigan right now, they have a bill. It's already passed the House and it's going to the Senate to bring baiting back. The legislature is doing that. They're bringing baiting back in Michigan, and they've done it twice. The DNR has outlawed baiting twice, and the legislature has brought it back. So by getting the legislature involved, there's a real risk for unintended consequence there. They might not do exactly what you'd hope they would do. In my mind, you would much rather have biologists and people that live and breathe this stuff. You would much rather have them proposing rules and voting on rules than you would people who are beholden to other groups that don't necessarily have hunters' best interest in mind.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Real quick, the Michigan thing.
Yeah.
What isn't that? Isn't that a money grab though? Because aren't they? Isn't the proposal a a tag that you have to buy, a baiting
like a license or something?
I don't know. I didn't see that. I know in Tennessee, I believe they just did that,
Yeah,
right? So you can buy a baiting permit, which is a money grab. But no, so this statistic probably isn't the same today, but I read this years ago. 5% of Michigan's gross agricultural product went to the baiting and feeding of white-tailed deer. 5%. And you think if Michigan's an agricultural state, that's a lot. I mean, that's millions and probably billions of dollars. I don't know what billions, but millions and millions of dollars that went into it. So, and also in Michigan, if you've ever gone up there, even though baiting is illegal and has been for the last 8 years, they still bait like crazy up there. I mean, you go to gas stations, sugar beets, carrots, corn, deer corn.
We know.
I mean, you go over to Pennsylvania, same thing. And it's always
Indiana,
been those people there.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah. I mean, so people are still doing it anyway. But that being said, and I don't know how much they enforce it in Michigan. I don't think they do very, very stringently like maybe some other states do. But also the argument, so you probably heard there was a young man who spoke in the public forum last week of a council meeting, and he used Michigan as a statistic. He said, well, they outlawed baiting in Michigan in 2018, and they killed 300, I'm going to screw the numbers up, but they killed 300-some thousand deer. And then this year they killed 300-some thousand deer. So it proves that you don't need baiting to kill a bunch of deer. Well, the statistic that he left out was Michigan's deer population is out of control. They have more deer up there than they know what to do. They have over 2 million deer in that state, and they're really scratching their head on what to do about it. As we are here in Ohio, we're losing levers. As we, for lack of a better word, devalue does, as we continue to focus on bucks, as we devalue does, the Division of Wildlife is losing levers to pull to rein that in. And here's something that I'm adamantly against, but I've heard this bounced around. Matter of fact, I heard this first from Mike Tonkovich, the previous deer administrator who just retired in May. He's like, hey, Rex, we may have to go to an earn a buck for a second buck, meaning that you can, Ohio's always been a $1 state. That's one of the things we've really done a good job from the very beginning. It's a $1 state, right? So where you can still kill your $1, but if you shoot X number of does, you can earn a second buck permit. And I told him, I said, Mike, you guys do that, I will fight you with my dying breath on that. Because I had I mean, one of the things that really is our salvation in this state as far as quality goes is we've always been one. I mean, the proof is in the pudding in Indiana. I mean, Indiana, geographically in Ohio, very similar. Northern Indiana flat, southern Indiana hilly. They're a red state, we're a red state. They have cities, we have cities, all this other demographic, very similar. But if you look at the number of trophy entries in Indiana since they went to a $1 state, it's off the charts.
It's mind-boggling.
Exactly. And so I really wouldn't want to see us ever do that. But the division is scratching its head going, what can we do to convince people to shoot more does? And it's tough. It really is tough.
Mike, my argument to the bait pile would be and honestly, I'd like your opinion on this. Don't you think that baiting is, or let's just say corn piles in general, like, don't you think corn piles are, so let's go back to Michigan. I think that they kill like 1.3 deer or something, but they're per hunter. I don't know if that stat's right or not, but so statistically speaking, they're killing $1, and maybe a handful of guys is killing $1 and a doe or $2 or whatever.
You can kill $2 in Michigan now.
Correct. But I'm saying that most guys are probably with a 1.3 deer ratio per hunter. Most guys are probably killing $1 and stopping. Some guys are killing $2. Some guys are killing $1 and a doe. But what I'm getting at is, I personally, and this is just my opinion, you can argue it if you disagree. I think that if Michigan were to go and allow baiting again, it's only going to encourage guys to shoot bucks over corn, because we have devalued the doe so poorly in the nation, not just in Ohio, not just in Michigan, et cetera. For one, guys don't want to deal with it. Processing is stupid expensive. If you don't have a walk-in cooler, you got to deal with her that day. You've got family, you got life, you got et cetera. So, what I'm getting at is, if we take away baiting, and this is my opinion, that doe walks by, that guy might be like, well, I haven't been watching that corn pile for 30 days in a row with my cell camera, and old Big Louie shows up every third day. He's like, I don't have my corn pile. I might whack that doe. That's just my opinion. I think.
But how do any of the variables that you mentioned with the cost of the processing and it's hot out and it's just, how does any of that change with bait or not bait?
Well, I think it determines that a guy is not just buck hunting in general anymore. So he's going to be opportunistic on just deer hunting because he's not sitting over the corn pile.
Okay.
Looking
All
at.
right.
Go ahead, Mike.
No, I want to rebut that. So so let's go back to that then. So now that 4-point walks by him, and he's not looking at Big Louie all of a sudden, but that 4-point's out there now. What are the chances that he shoots that, and what does that do to your age structure?
I don't think he shoots the 4-point because we just talked about him getting ridiculed on social media, and he still has the cell cameras out there. So
but maybe without the corn pile, he doesn't know Big Louie's out there.
Well, it's possible, but with today's technology, we can get into drones. Like with today's technology, he knows that Big Louie's out there.
Yeah, but it depends. So let me say this real quick. Drones are only effective in my part of the state after the leaves drop. You can't really see. There's no field. I mean, there are fields, but there just isn't nearly as much open area where you're scouting in the summertime. You don't have a clue.
So what is that, 75% of the deer season then?
Well, when you look at when most of the deer are killed, with archery, most of them are killed in October and November.
Yeah, but I'm saying that I kind of disagree with that argument with the leaf cover because it's 25% of the deer season in general. Is that you?
Yeah.
You know
I agree, but what I'm saying is you don't know about that deer all summer long. You don't know. You can't keep an eye on him, where he's going, what he's doing.
I understand.
With a drone, you can. Not down here, you can. You might be in an agriculture area, but you can't do that down here.
Up around us, you could probably find them about any time you wanted.
Yeah, so the problem that we're seeing with the drones, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole just yet, but the problem that we're seeing in our area, now I will say that you probably have a valid argument about the hill country because of the foliage.
I could see that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
for sure.
But around us with the small woodlots, large ag, a big woodlot around us is 200-300 acres. If you have a 200 to 300 acre woodlot, I mean that's huge. Around us. So these guys are buying these drones, and frankly, Kevin, you can get into your story too of when you were physically in the tree. I know multiple people that. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mike. According to law and regulation, they're doing nothing wrong. They fly the drone, they find the buck, they bring it back, they land the drone, and then they go pursue the deer.
Yeah.
And personally, Mike, I think that's terrible. I think that for crying out loud, we're not allowed to use walkie-talkies to talk to each other, but we're going to allow guys to fly drones. I mean, I don't know.
It is illegal. You can't be flying a drone and talking to some guy on the phone. Go left, go right, go over. The drone has to be put away. But you're right. No, you are exactly right. And I agree with you. So how do you guys feel about this? I'm just going to throw this out. This has been proposed to me a couple times, and I kind of like this idea. So, first let's talk about drones. So Pennsylvania, drones are illegal for everything, right? I mean, you can't use it for anything to do with hunting, retrieval, nothing. So first, let me say that the drone is a phenomenal tool for locating dead deer or wounded dead deer. It's a phenomenal tool. So far more deer are going to be found with a drone versus without a drone. So I'm pretty good friends with the guy who's the deputy director of the PA Game Commission. He's going to come over here and turkey hunt with me next month. He deer hunted with me a couple times. So a guy, a local hunter here in my area, shot a deer, I guess it was two falls ago, and he couldn't find it. And he hired a guy with a drone to come out. He called me, told me what's going on. So I took this guy, the deputy director of the PA Game Commission. We went out and we watched this whole thing unfold and wound up finding the deer. And it was 8 properties over from where he'd shot it and crossed a bunch of. He would have not found it in anybody's lifetime without that drone. He found, and it was a Boone and Crockett. It was a giant buck. On the ride back, this fellow from Pennsylvania, the deputy director, told me, he said, "We really got to rethink this." He said, "That's the most incredible tool I've ever seen." He said, "That was unbelievable. That guy wouldn't have found that deer, even with the dog. He wouldn't have been able with the dogs. He wouldn't have been able to take the dog.
Property lines, he
had to get all kinds of. So it's a valuable tool. But here's an idea that's been proposed to me that I really like. And that is, you can look for a deer whenever, as far as wounded, or you're looking for a dead or a wounded deer. You can any time, but you should not be able to fly that drone and hunt that same property on the same day.
All right.
So if you fly on a Tuesday and you see a big deer out in the field or something like that, you put the drone away. You can't go hunt there until Wednesday. Because that deer is not going to be where you saw him or where you left him.
Right.
Now, is it a scouting tool? Can you find deer? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, sure. But I think that'll take a lot of it out of the equation of what you're talking about. And some people say, well, how's that enforceable? Where these new drones have flight logs. So if a wildlife officer gets a complaint, hey, so-and-so's flying a drone over there and he checked in a deer on the same day, wildlife officer can look at your flight log
files,
on your controller, and he can see exactly where the drone flew, and he can see what time and the date and all that stuff. And so, I mean, would it be hard to enforce? Yeah, but I think it makes sense. I think it's a step in the right direction.
No, it's 100.
I like it. Yeah,
I'd sign that bill tomorrow.
The 24-hour.
Yeah, I would too. I would too. I think that's something that definitely needs drones. So, like anything else, you were talking about how expensive trail cameras used to be and how cheap they are now. The price of these drones is going to continue to come down. It's going to be
we've seen it already.
In a couple years, I don't know if you fellas like to coyote hunt. I'm a real avid coyote hunter, and I for years hunted them for 30 some years. I hunted them almost exclusively in the daytime because hunting them at night with a light was almost impossible.
Yeah.
And then when we went to night vision and thermal stuff, I mean, it was unbelievable. When we first started doing that, of course, the technology was expensive, and now, shoot, you can get a thermal scope for under $1,000.
Yeah.
You know, thermal binoculars. So, it's made it accessible for just about anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. We have.
And speaking of that real quick. So when we're talking about technology, the winter of COVID, I've got a good friend of mine here in Athens who's a veterinarian. He and I went coyote hunting 100 nights during the pandemic, that winter, 100 nights, which that's like 3 months every night. We literally, we just wore them out. And we figured out that over that 3 months, we fired over 500 rounds at coyotes. I mean, that's a lot, right? And that's shooting up the countryside.
Yep.
And not one porch light came on. Hey, what are you guys doing? Not one sheriff's. Hey, what are you guys? Not one game warden. Hey, what are you guys doing? And we're out with this thermal technology at night shooting at these coyotes. And we used to laugh about, shoot, we could kill every big buck in this county if we wanted to. And now with suppressors, you don't even hear the sound of the bullet hitting the coyotes louder than the rapport of the barrel. Yeah. So the technology right now, if people want to poach, oh my gosh. I mean, the technology is out there where you can kill every big buck in the woods.
Yeah. I think it's happening, to be honest.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah, and it's sad that, obviously you don't write the funding for the DNR, but it is sad that, there's only one officer per county. A couple counties don't even have an officer. It's like, you can't blame the guy for not taking up every lead that he gets. And I'm sure people just, I know personally, and once again, I'm going to talk about personal experiences, but I think it's relevant. I know personal friends, me included, that have called about suspicious activity, spotlighting, jacklighting fields. And obviously in Ohio, it's illegal to jacklight. And, the DNR just, it almost seems like they don't do anything about it. I'm not saying that they don't, but it's
sometimes they literally don't have the time.
Yeah, most of the time they physically don't have the manpower to do it. So,
yeah, no, I agree with you. Most of the time, a wildlife officer can just be reactive. It's hard for him to be proactive. Yeah, it really is because and when you think about it, especially up in Northeast Ohio or North Central Ohio, where you guys are from too, you got all those people up there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it is challenging. That's for sure.
Yeah. No, go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
No, I just was going to I didn't want to finish the conversation on baiting there. We didn't really get to finish that. So getting back to baiting being illegal. So the states that I'm aware of, Michigan and Wisconsin, that outlawed baiting, the idea was to slow the spread of CWD, which was not effective. Okay. Deer are social creatures. It's just not effective. So when Michigan made baiting illegal, they didn't do it because they wanted to improve the age structure, whatever, blah, 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 blah. They did it because the idea is that you don't want deer congregating nose to nose, less of a chance of disease being spread. Well, it hasn't helped. It hasn't contained the disease. If you look at states like Illinois or Iowa that have never allowed baiting, CWD is rampant there.
Yeah.
And I'm going to use Illinois as an example too about baiting. So 2 years ago, during our muzzleloader season, my son owns an Airbnb out in the country, and there were some guys staying in it from New Jersey that had leased some property here in Ohio, and they were packing up in the middle of our muzzleloader season to go to Illinois to hunt. They have some lease or they have some property there to hunt. And I asked them, I said, I'm curious, guys, you're leaving a state that allows baiting in the late season, and you're going to another state that doesn't allow baiting in the late season. I said, what are your thoughts? And they said, oh, no, it's no problem. The farmer where we hunt, a week before we get there, he leaves standing corn. He goes out and brush hogs, X number of acres. We see more deer in Illinois than we do in Ohio.
Yeah.
And so my point in that is people are always coming up with ways to beat the system. You know what I mean? When you make something illegal. And what's interesting about some of what we're seeing now is, this is really kind of funny when you think about it. I mean, hunters are asking to be regulated. They're asking to be great. Usually it's the other way around. Usually it's too much regulation, leave us alone, that kind of crap.
Yeah.
Now we've come like full circle. We're like where the pendulum has swung back the other way. And they're like, no, we need more regulation. We need to stop this. And hunting was never designed for these crossbows that shoot 400 feet a second and 100 yards and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Let me also say something real quick that popped into my mind when we were talking a little bit ago. So as far as the anti-baiting goes, and the crossbows tie into this too, but the anti-baiting goes, this is anecdotal. This is just what I saw with my eyes. But what I saw with my eyes, where that came from, or at least where it got started, was by people who owned large chunks of land or controlled it. Either owned it, exclusive permission, leased it, whatever. They had big chunks of land, and they were mad because small landowners or smaller landowners that border them or in their neighborhood are baiting deer, these deer that they're quote unquote trying to manage, trying to grow the quality off of their property and killing them. Those were the first people to complain to me about it, were large landowners, which again, I've been victimized by that probably as much as anybody. And so those are the people that got that started. And so when you think about it, what are they saying? Well, they're saying, well, by baiting and by using crossbows and cell cameras and drones and whatever else, we've made it too easy. It's too easy. Well, what they're saying, though, the hypocrisy in that is if these small landowners around me weren't baiting deer off my property, it would be easier for me to kill a big buck every year. It would be easier for me because I'd have more big bucks to hunt. And so the hypocrisy in that is one person's mad because this other guy has this easier way of hunting. And if he just wouldn't do that, it would make my hunting easier or better. Does that make sense to you?
It does.
No, it does, yeah.
So anyway, we can go talk about other stuff now if you want.
No. So I just had one more question kind of tied with this.
Sure.
So you said we can't have quantity and quality of deer numbers,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
So
that's right.
Right now we have quantity of deer, right, in Ohio.
Well,
yeah. We have maybe not as many as we had 15, 20 years ago. We got a lot of deer, though.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
So how are we going to get those numbers down? How do we get people to shoot more does so that the quality will go up?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I wish I had an answer for you. So, for example, the bonus doe tags, they expired. They extended them out to the second gun season this year, right?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people said, well, man, that's stupid. Why did you cut it off? Well, here's the problem. It's the old marketing adage: supplies are limited. So if you make something real, like you guys mentioned earlier, if you make something really easy, I'll wait until January. Then January rolls around, it's awful cold outside, or the Super Bowl's next week, at that bowl game or whatever, who knows, whatever.
Yeah.
But people, if you don't create a sense of urgency with people, then a lot of times they just won't do it.
Right.
So here's something that Illinois has done over the years, which is really pretty smart as far as killing deer goes. If you statistically look at when deer are killed, opening day of any season is almost always the best day, unless the weather's terrible. Opening day, like Ohio used to have a 2-week gun season. We used to have a concurrent 2-week gun season back 25 years ago, and hardly any deer were killed that second week, next to none. And so we moved it back to a week because they realized that if you condense it, if you create a sense of urgency, there's a better chance that more deer will get killed.
Okay.
Well, Illinois has, and I don't know if they still do this, but they used to, they would have like a series of 3-day gun seasons, open for 3 days, closed for 2 weeks, open for 3 days, closed for 2 weeks, over 3, and they kept having opening day, and they were able to kill a lot of deer by creating that sense of urgency. So that's why the state does that, the limited days for the doe tags, is they're trying to encourage people to use them.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I agree with that. I guess go
ahead. I'm sorry.
No, sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, the fellow there in the green shirt on the left, So to answer your question, I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah.
I wish I knew. I wish I knew. We really. So Mike Tonkovich told me a couple of years ago. He said, Mike, we're headed for a cliff. You're going to see some things like you never. And man, was he right? I mean, let me tell you a little bit about what happened here in my area.
Mm-hmm.
So we had as many deer this time last year in the counties that were devastated by EHD. We had as many deer as I had ever seen since I've lived here. I mean, it was ridiculous, the number of deer we had. I mean, all day long in people's yards and driving up and down. It was like dodgeball. I mean, I live out in the country, but I mean, it was really, you had to be on your toes, especially if you were driving at night, because the deer were everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had a perfect storm. We had just torrential rainstorms through May, June, and July. We had, I think, 3 times the amount of rain in July that we normally have. So it was a perfect storm for these midges, which also, and I don't know why this is, but we have ticks this year. I started picking ticks off myself in February as soon as the snow melted. Mm-hmm. It was crazy. I've never seen ticks. Matter of fact, I went mushroom hunting the other day in a place that I've hunted for 20-some years. I've never picked a tick off myself at mushroom hunting in that place. And I picked a sack of mushrooms Sunday and picked like 50 ticks, knocked like 50 ticks off me.
Yeah.
So whatever the conditions were that were right for those midges were also right for ticks.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, and those Asian beetles, those ladybugs. But anyway, so we had a perfect storm. We had a lot of deer, maybe more than we've ever had before. And we had a lot of rain, and then the faucet just shut off at the end of July, and it got really dry, which exposed all that mud from that standing water, which is where those midges breed.
Mm-hmm.
And the midges were so bad. I mean, midges will bite us. They're like a gnat, like a no-see. They look like a little speck of pepper on you, and they'll bite you, but they don't make you sick. It was so bad down here in August and September last year that when I would mow my grass, I'd have to like wipe my eyes every 2 seconds to keep the midges out of my eyes. They were so bad. It was just everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so literally we had a perfect storm. We had a bunch of deer, we had a bunch of rain, which created a bunch of midges, which in turn created just an unbelievable amount of death.
Yeah.
Fellas, if you could have seen what happened down, I wouldn't have believed. If someone would have told me the extent of what was going to happen here, I wouldn't have believed it. I mean, there were literally stretches miles and miles and miles that you could not roll your window down. I mean, the smell of death was everywhere.
Yeah.
It blanketed hundreds of square miles.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
We've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, we have some friends that live down in that area, and they said it's just insane.
Wasteland.
It was nuts. It was nuts. And so that was the cliff he was talking about. And I'll be honest with you, I fully expect that we're going to see stuff like this in other areas of Ohio. I don't think this was an anomaly, just I think it could even be the new norm. And that's really concerning because, I mean, obviously EHD is a real problem throughout the deer's range. And, our deer up in this part of the country have very little immunity to it. And so it's just devastating.
Yeah. Mike, I do have a thought on the doe numbers. Has the DNR or has the council ever proposed like a doe-only season?
So wait a minute, I could be wrong about this. There have been doe-only seasons in the past. I'm pretty sure, and I'm getting old, but I'm pretty sure maybe 20 years ago there was a muzzleloader season, an early muzzleloader season that was antlerless only. I think I could be wrong about that, but I think there was a season. For sure, there was an early muzzleloader season in October. I do remember that, but I think it was antlerless only. No. Well, the Wildlife Council doesn't propose anything. We just okay or no okay. It would have to come from the division, but no, I have not heard that. But I'm not saying that's a bad idea.
Yeah,
something like that to encourage doe hart. I mean, to encourage animals.
See, here's my argument for it. So you can just maybe put a bug in your ear. My argument would be that most guys are buck hunting. In general, most guys, when they go to the woods, I mean, granted, there is the 10 to 20% that probably are just meat hunters that will shoot anything that walks by, but that's the minority, right? Like most guys are probably out there.
100% of our circle we're hunting bucks.
Yeah, every time you go to the woods, it's a strategy to kill Big Louie. It's a strategy to, see Big Louie, et cetera. You're not out there to shoot nanny doe. So I know personally, like, if I have a big deer in the area that I'm targeting and a nanny walks by me, I'm probably not going to shoot her because there's a possibility that I can kill Big Louie.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense. Sure.
If we had a season, because here's my thought process. If I shoot that nanny, She runs 100 yards, falls over. I go down and get her and drag her out of the woods. I disturb the area. I tip off Big Louie. Big Louie may or may not go to the neighbors who is also hunting Big Louie. So it's like an endless cycle. But if you had a season that was antlerless only, I think it would encourage guys. And personally, I would put it more towards like, a colder time of the year. I wouldn't do it early. Because then guys are going to have the argument of I don't want to deal with it. But if you put it in a time frame in a calendar year where you could hang it for a couple of days and maybe get away with some 30 to mid 40 degree temperature where a guy could hang it, that might be a good idea for the state to consider, because then you're going to encourage guys to shoot the doe, because if you mess it up, it's okay because the neighbor can't shoot Big Louie. And that's just, I don't know. It's just my thought.
No. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Yeah. I see exactly. And I agree with you that there are probably lots of does that aren't being shot for that very reason.
Yeah.
Because the guy doesn't want to take a chance on screwing up his area or whatever, or running that big deer over to his neighbor. So that makes sense to me. Yeah, I mean, I would support something like that for sure.
I would love a doe-only season.
Mm-hmm. Mike, I reached out to a couple friends that I trust and just asked them, like, hey, we're having Mike on. Any thoughts? Any questions? Yeah. One of the questions, it's fairly long, but it kind of ties into this doe thing, and I kind of want to bring it up because, a genuine question about change. If it doesn't work, why can't we just change it back? So when proposing a change, a common response that we hear is that if it doesn't work, you don't want to see the repercussions from the state, almost stating like if it doesn't work, the state will take matters into their own hands. Is there any facts to that, or like, because
that's not been my experience. No,
I just feel like I personally feel that as well. Like sometimes I feel like, like for the baiting example, like, why. I know it's not as cookie cutter as just doing it, but why can't we just try it for a couple of years? And if it doesn't work, then, hey, we tried and we're going to go back. Like what's the big deal of, I feel like there's such a hard time with change. And
no, that's true.
I just don't understand it.
So, there's an argument that, and I've debated this with people before. I think Kevin's one of the people that believe this, but so they use the Iowa model. They say, Iowa doesn't allow baiting, and they but they dramatically limit their non-resident hunters, and they do all kinds of things that, of course, a resident can kill $3 there, but Iowa's, apparently really has their stuff together, and the rest of the country can learn from them. And I'm not saying Iowa's a great state. I mean, no doubt about it, I have excellent hunting there. But you can't compare Ohio to Iowa for a lot of reasons. One, I mean, there are more people in a couple of counties and around Columbus than the whole state of Iowa.
Right.
And then Iowa's a rural state. I mean, there's still a lot of people, a lot of kids that wear Carhartts to school there. You don't get a lot of that here in Ohio. We're more of an urban state, and our terrain is different. We definitely have more woods than they do, but they have a lot more CRP than we do. That's another one. People I've seen just, Iowa only 7% forested. Well, the deer only live in forests. No, they live in brush. They live in all kinds of habitats, so they don't necessarily need a canopy to survive. And so Iowa's 20% larger than Ohio. But again, I'm not dogging on Iowa, because Iowa's a great state. And I'll also say that I don't think we do everything right, and I think that there are things that we can do to get better, and and have a better quality experience. But things that I worry about. So getting back to the baiting thing. So because so many properties, like you mentioned, have been bought up and leased up. So if you outlaw baiting, there are a lot of guys and gals that used to hunt those properties that were tied up, and they're forced onto smaller properties. And if you take baiting away from them, their realistic chances of seeing a deer plummet. And if their chances plummet, they are probably going to quit hunting. And we are in a downward spiral of losing hunters. So I'm going to screw this up too, but when I was your age, when I was in my 20s, the average age of a hunter, I think something like this, in 1985, I think the average age of a hunter in Ohio was like 26. Today, the average age of a hunter in Ohio is well over 50. And so we're aging out. There's some other things in play. There's the erosion of the American family. You have single parent moms and dads don't take their sons and daughters hunting and fishing. Even families that have a mom and a dad, both parents work, and there's AAU ball and all the other stuff going on. So now it's up to grandpa to take kids hunting. We continue to lose hunting. We continue to lose spots. And so if we outlawed baiting tomorrow, if we said whole state done, we're not going to do it. I believe that there are several people, a lot of hunters in this state that would just say, heck it, I can only hunt so and such woodlot, and it's only 12 acres, and I'm not going to see anything, and I'm going to quit. I also think there are a lot of people that own hundreds and thousands of acres that would be dancing in the streets going, yes, it's great, because I got all these food plots and I got all this other stuff, and man, my quality's going to get better and all other stuff. And unfortunately, those people aren't going to necessarily let that guy on the 12 acres come hunt their property now. That's the other thing, getting back to reducing hunters, reducing non-resident hunters. You guys probably want to talk about that too, right? So and I'm not saying that we don't need to look at something sometime out in the future. I kind of like what Illinois did. Illinois put a cap of, I think, 25,000 non-resident hunters. And I think they hit it this year for the first time ever. They hit their cap in like December or January, and they shut it down. No more non-resident hunters, which obviously Ohio, we can do that. During the pandemic, we stopped selling non-resident license during the pandemic because we didn't want people traveling in from out of state and bringing COVID here or whatever. So it can be done. That's not that it's an impossible thing to do. But the problem with people say, well, if non-residents are reduced, then our outfitters will be reduced and our leasing will be reduced. And I would argue, I'm not saying the outfitters, but as far as the leasing goes, so in my area of Ohio, and this is anecdotal, but I can tell you that most of the properties around me are not leased by guys from out of state. They're leased by guys from Akron or Cleveland or Cincinnati or Toledo or Dayton or somewhere that doesn't have the quality of the hunting or the number of hunting deer that we'd have. So if all of a sudden these non-resident guys quit coming here because they didn't get drawn or whatever, those leases are going to come up. But are all the landowners that have been leasing that ground for years going to say, okay, everybody can come hunt my ground for free now, I don't want that money anymore? Or are those leases going to get gobbled up by guys from metropolitan areas in Ohio, or even locals within, and with guys within Athens County leasing ground because they want to control more ground? So some people say, well, yeah, but those are in-state guys. But I think the net loss in hunters would be very negligible, and the net loss as far as leasing goes would also be negligible, because those same properties that are now leased by out-of-state guys would just be leased by in-state guys.
Yeah, I do have somewhat of a counter argument, or just a thought. So until you brought up the point of the farmer or the landowner saying that, hey, I don't need this money anymore, which is a good point. Do you not feel that if baiting was taken off the landscape, it would encourage people to not want to lease up so much ground or isolate themselves only because they don't have a way of monitoring it anymore? Like, I almost have an opinion that if a guy so you had mentioned a property that had multiple out-of-state hunters that surrounded it. You said, North Carolina a couple times.
Yep.
I assume those guys have mineral sites. I assume those guys have bait piles. Absolutely. I assume those guys have maybe a local kid that they're paying, $20 a time to go dump corn for them. So if they weren't able to do that, couldn't we make the argument that they wouldn't waste their time coming to Ohio because they would have a harder time hunting?
Yeah. Real quick, so I am that local kid to a certain extent. There are several landowners in my area, out of the area and out-of-state landowners, that I run trail cameras for them in the wintertime, and they let me turkey hunt in the spring. That's my trespass fee in the spring. So I'll run. I don't necessarily fill their feeders for them, but I'll run trail cameras for them and help them and hang stands and do other things to help them. So I can turkey hunt their property, because they don't come here to turkey hunt.
Yeah.
But anyway, I've used that as a leverage piece to gain places to turkey hunt. But anyway, so getting back to your point, yes and no. So I think that I see your point. I see what you're saying, but I also think that a lot of that ground that we're talking about would be leased up by somebody else who would then go in and plant food plots and blanket it with more cameras and, and do other things to improve the habitat and control more ground, because now they could, because those leases would become available. So I don't know. I just think that outlawing baiting statewide, at least in the short run, for sure, would have a negative impact on our number of hunters. I really believe that. And people say, well, in Michigan it didn't. Yeah, they still have the same. No, it isn't. Michigan, their number of hunters has continued to tank just like ours has.
Oh, so is ours. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I don't want to say my final thoughts, because I don't want to end this, but maybe final thoughts on baiting is like, so obviously our numbers are tanking, and let's say that we're not really doing anything to change it. Mm-hmm. So it's like, at the end of the day, if we changed it and it got worse, what's the difference between it just getting worse? At least we're trying, right?
So yeah, I understand what you're saying. But let me say, it's not that they're not doing anything. I mean, the Division of Wildlife is trying in a bunch of different ways to encourage more people, more young people, social media presence and youth days. And I mean, they're trying to do things to encourage hunting, but it's more of a societal thing. You know what I'm saying? And I've had people tell me, well, Iowa doesn't have this problem. Again, Iowa is a rural state. Mm-hmm. Iowa is mostly a farming state. Those are rural kids. Those are kids that grow up, in rural areas, rural communities like that. So they don't have the same issue. Every other state that has the same issues that we have has the same issues we have.
Yeah.
They have the same problems. They're losing hunters. And so, and getting back to the bait. So really the one thing that you haven't touched on that really is a legitimate gripe for outlawing baiting.
Turkeys.
Is, there you go. If not, and not aflatoxins, that's a bunch of baloney too, as far as turkeys. I mean, there's the newest data even supports this now, that aflatoxins at bait sites are really only a problem in the warm, wet months, May, June, July. So not many people have thrown out corn piles on the ground in May. I'm not saying people aren't doing it, but not many people are doing it.
Right.
So and if aflatoxins were a real issue, think about all the waste grain in Indiana and Iowa and Illinois and even Northwest Ohio. I mean, there's corn lying all over the fields. And so if that was a serious problem, I'm not saying it's not a problem, but if that was the demise of our turkeys. But what is has been an absolute contributor is people baiting deer, hunters baiting deer in the fall and winter are artificially propping up the raccoon and possum population, which is a serious problem because nobody traps anymore. Nobody hunts, or not nobody, but very few people trap. Right. Very few people hunt raccoons, hunt possums anymore. That's a serious problem. So we're unintentionally, hunters as a group, propping up the raccoon population big time, and that's a major problem for turkeys.
Yeah, we know that. 100%. I had mentioned earlier that I've got that gravity feeder behind the house that that I keep stocked year round. I can't tell you how many nights that I check my camera and there's 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 raccoons sitting underneath that thing. And I have the critter pole or whatever you want to call it that goes up so they can't climb it. But I tell you what, when the deer come to the feeder and they miss some out of their mouth or whatever, they knock some on the ground. Them coon are there every single night.
So since you brought that up,
go ahead.
I had a question that we had in our show notes. Is there any possibility that they will open up season round for being able to shoot a raccoon
or put a pounding
let's talk. Okay, well, let's talk about that for a second.
Okay.
So, all right. So if my first response to that is this: if very few people are trapping or hunting them in November and December when the pelts are prime, how many people are going to trap them in July and August when the mosquitoes and the ticks and everything else are bad? Not too many. No, but there would be some people for sure. There would be. So in the Ohio Revised Code, there is, I forget the number, 15-30 something. Anyway, I don't know the number, but it says that nuisance animals may be taken at any time off if you're a landowner and you have nuisance animals. Now you can't charge, like you can't go onto somebody else's property. You have to have a permit from the state to be a nuisance trapper if you're going to charge people. But if you don't charge and it's just on your own land, you can trap raccoons all summer long if you want to. I mean, it says they can be. And the former law administrator, he's now deceased, his name was Ken Fitz. The guy was the law administrator before the current law administrator. Told me once at a council meeting, he said, in the history of Ohio, there has never been a ticket written for killing a raccoon out of season in the history of Ohio.
Yeah.
So here's the problem with having a season year round. So amongst us and the hunters that are listening to this podcast, it's a great idea, right? Yeah, it makes perfect sense. But for the gals at the Hudson soccer mom meeting or whatever, not a good story. And here's why. Oh, well, why do you want to kill all these raccoons? Well, they're eating all our turkey eggs and we want to kill more turkeys. Oh, so you want to kill those animals so you can kill more of those animals.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's not a good story to the general public. And when we talk about the hunting of the population, there's 5% of the population of Ohio roughly considers themselves to be hunters. 10% considers themselves to be anti-hunters, which is twice as many as us. Then you have the 85% in the middle that just don't care.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't want, they just don't want deer everywhere. They want to be able to grow a garden, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the people that as a hunter, we're most concerned with.
Yeah.
Those are the people that we want. And so we don't want to do things that cast us in a negative light. And that might be something.
Yeah.
What's the justification for it? Well, we want to kill more turkeys. And so if we can kill more raccoons, then we can kill more turkey, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, what are you going to do with those raccoons? Well, we're going to throw them in a ditch because they're not worth anything.
Right.
That kind of stuff. So it can be a tricky proposition. Just be careful what you ask for.
Yeah.
No, I understand.
So, but what you're saying though is if you're the landowner, you're able to take away nuisance animals. But like if I have permission on farm down here at Jimmy's place, I cannot do that because I'm not the landowner. Or
no, I think you can't. Well, you know what, guys, here I don't want to get tangled up and tell somebody wrong.
Right,
you have to.
Right.
Here's what you do. Google it. Look it up in the Ohio Revised Code, nuisance animals. So I know you have to have a permit to charge people.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't charge, I think you can on your I believe you can. No, you can on your own property for sure. But I believe you can on your neighbor's property if he gives you permission.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? But you can't charge him as a nuisance trap.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes sense.
That's good information. I'll look
Yeah,
that up.
Yeah, look that up though. Don't take my
yeah.
word for it on that.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure that's the way it reads.
Okay. Well, that's new information, so that's very cool and helpful, I think.
Yeah, actually, that's that makes me shooting my raccoons behind the house a little bit more easy. It's a little bit because I've always man, should I be doing this or not?
Yeah.
But no, interesting. Mike, before we get down another rabbit hole with the turkeys, I do want to talk about, you had said something about the DNR trying to get the youth involved, which I think is great.
Yeah.
I think that going back, and I know this isn't anything that like you and I can change today, but I think that doing all that is almost pointless if the kids don't have somewhere to hunt. If they don't,
no question.
Going back to the access, I guess I'm so passionate about my feelings and thoughts on trying to make things hard again, because we're 30. We were raised in the generation of, we didn't have the cell phones. We didn't have we grew up with that when we were in high school and stuff, but we didn't have cell cameras. Nobody really hunted with bait back then.
Mm-hmm.
We learned by when you, even a doe, you shot a doe when you were younger, man, that was something.
That's an accomplishment.
That was a big accomplishment. And I feel like, I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this. I feel like the liberalization of laws has just made it so hard to retain and get the recruitment of this younger generation, because I think that they just find it too easy in a sense. And I don't know if you have a different opinion on that or not. But
no, I do not adamantly disagree with your point.
Yeah.
I don't. And part of it is because I don't have an answer. I mean, I don't have the answer for how we engage these kids. I mean, there's a part of me that says, it's also an instant gratification culture. And if we make things too tough, people will quit.
Yeah.
If you make things too easy, people will quit.
Yeah.
So let me give you an example. I raised 3 sons. I have a 31, 32, and 33. The 32 we adopted. It's a long story, but anyway, all of them are avid outdoorsmen, hunters, fishermen. When they were little, I had a good friend of mine who had a son that was older and who just absolutely loved to hunt. And I asked this friend of mine, I said, how did you do it? What did you do? How did you keep them, how did you get them interested? He said, well, every time there was an opportunity to take them, I invited him. And there wasn't always an opportunity, but when there was, I invited him, and he always wanted to go. And so that's what I did with my kids. I never forced them to go hunting, but I invited them whenever I could. And then as I got older, I sort of channeled a lot of my enthusiasm for the sport into them. And I used to tell people, this is how you know when you really love your kid. When you've got one really hot deer stand and you're sitting in your truck waiting to pick him up. You know what I mean? That's how you know when you really love somebody. You know what I mean? When you've got one really hot spot and you put him there instead of you.
Yeah.
And so when my kids got old enough to climb into every stand I had, that's when hunting really got fun for me.
Yeah.
Really, that was the zenith of my hunting days. And now, we still hunt how they take me hunting now instead of me taking them hunting. So anyway, getting back to your point, how do you do that? Man, that's a tough one. Again, it's a societal thing, and with all the distractions today too. And I mean, for example, I was a wrestler back in the day, and so I wrestled during the season and a little bit in the summertime, whatever. Now, kids I know, the good wrestlers are wrestling 12 months a year, and traveling on it. And you got AAU this and AAU that, and all these summer leagues and all this stuff. And so it's tough. It really is tough. And then you combine that with urban sprawl. You combine that with leasing. So leasing was slow to catch on up here, by the way. So leasing was big in the South since the 70s. Back when in the South, they have large landowners, paper companies, forest products companies, and big cotton farms that own, hundreds of thousands of acres. They've been leasing ground down there forever. It just caught on up here really in the last, 15, 20, 30 years. I actually am part of the blame for that too. I think I was the first person in Athens County to lease ground. In 1993, I leased 2,000 acres, contiguous acres, from a veterinarian for $2,000, $1 an acre.
Oh,
and people said, have you lost your mind? People are like, what the hell's the matter with you? And I'm like, hey, it's cheaper than buying it.
Yeah.
And all I want to do is hunt. And I lost that lease 6 years later to deeper pockets. I lost that to 2 cardiologists and another veterinarian who paid the guy way more than I would. And I had all that elbow grease in there. I planted food plots. I did timber stand improvement, all kinds of stuff, thinking that I was going to have it for a long time. And I couldn't get mad at the landowner because these guys offered him. And what happened, my biggest mistake was I killed a couple good bucks off of it. People found out about it.
Yeah.
They started talking about it. And next thing you know, I lost it to deeper pockets.
Yeah.
So
could you imagine?
That's happened to me.
2,000
acres for $2,000.
I could not imagine.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
Oh, yeah.
I'll go to the bank right now.
yeah, exactly.
Oh,
no, those were the days, guys. Those were the days.
Yeah.
And back then, how about this? I bought some ground in 1990. I bought 80 acres.
Don't tell me this. I'm going to get so jealous.
I bought 80 acres behind my house in rural Athens County. I paid $400 an acre. And my next door neighbor, pulled me aside because they used to publish the land transfers in our paper, and he saw it in the paper and he said, Mike, 400. He said, have you lost your mind? He said, that's hillside ground. That's $50 an acre ground, which it was in 1967 when he bought all his ground next to me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, but man, I want to control it. I want to improve it. I want to do all this stuff. And land actually wound up being the best investments I've ever made.
Amen.
I will tell you, fellas, the factory that made land, went out of business a long time ago. There's no more. You can lose money in buildings and other things, but they're not making any more land. And so, boy, I've never known a person in my life say to me, man, I bought that ground 30 years ago and I should have went to Aruba, or I should have bought that car or something.
Yeah.
No, but I know a lot of guys that say, man, I should have bought that land 30 years ago. And it's all relative. So 30 years ago, $400 an acre was a lot. You know what I mean? That same ground's $4,000 an acre now. Where you're at, it's probably $10,000 an acre or more.
Yeah.
Try 20.
More,
So,
Yeah,
exactly. And so if you think it's expensive now, wait till 30 years from now. You know what I mean?
This
so
is true.
I guess my point is I'm encouraging my sons to buy every acre that they can possibly afford. Because they've been the best investments I've ever made. And you can't kill a 150-inch buck on a mutual fund. You know what I mean? You can't call up a turkey on a stock, or whatever. Yeah. But what else can you buy and enjoy, and it appreciates in value? I mean, land is just as good as it gets.
Mike, I'll cut you a deal. I'll slip you a $50 bill if you can call my wife and convince her of that tonight.
Yeah, right.
Oh, yeah. Boy, I keep trying.
I will gladly tell her some stories about me. I was what is known as an unconscious competent, which means you're doing a really good job, but you don't know it. I bought ground for years because I wanted it, because I wanted to control it. And, not because I thought it was a great investment. Like I said, it wound up being some of the best investments I ever made.
Yeah. I
bought a lake years ago, a 28-acre lake down here that was just a tremendous investment. You could water ski on it. I mean, it was a big lake. And it's, when I say I have a PhD in the Wildlife Management School of Hard Knocks, So this is where I learned it with fish. You can have quantity or quality. So prior to me owning it, it was an absentee landowner. It was like public property. Everybody would fish there, and it was a tremendous fishery. Then I took it over and kicked everybody. I didn't kick everybody out. What I did was I wanted to be asked. Anybody that asked me for permission, I would grant them permission. But I just wanted to be asked. And so the only people I ever kicked out were people that didn't ask for permission. But it took me about 3 or 4 or 5 years to learn that if you don't take a bunch of fish out of a lake like that, you're going to have a bunch of stunted fish. And so instead of having a 5-pound bass underneath every log, I had 50 bass underneath every log, but they were, 10 inches long.
Yeah.
To keep that healthy balance, you've got to take fish out of a lake. You just have to.
Yeah.
Same thing with a deer too. If you don't kill enough does. So getting back to, we were talking about that 800 acres that I used to control behind my house. Same thing. The hunting, after I took over, the hunting got worse every year because the habitat started to implode. I didn't cut any trees, which is another mistake. And because we weren't killing enough does, a doe will displace its male offspring to keep her from breeding his sisters and cousins and aunts and nieces and all that crap. And so what happened was I had these does back there that had like horse heads. You could put saddles on them and ride them, and they were displacing all their male offspring. And so I was the factory producing these 1.5 and 2.5-year-old bucks for all the people hunting around me, and most of the ground around me was either public or got hunted really heavy. And so it took me forever to figure that out. That's, again, getting back to the quality and quantity. You can have one or the other. You've got to kill deer to have good quantity. You got to take fish out of a pond or a lake like that to have good fishing. You just have to.
Yeah. No, we're not disagreeing at all. We have a doe problem in Ohio, and we need to take care of it. And I don't have a good answer, and it sounds like, we don't know what the answer is going to be, or it is what it is.
Well, fellas, I think what's going to happen if we're not careful is we're going to see like disease outbreaks like we saw here in Southeast Ohio. I think it's going to get out of control, or we're going to see a rebellion from the 85%. They're like, what are you people going to do about these deer?
Yeah.
I can't grow a garden. I can't, all that stuff. I think if you look, I'm sure it's the same way where you guys are. The small towns and cities are now overrun with deer.
Yeah.
Right? You see these sharpshooters coming in and all this crap. And so, we're either going to hit a cliff where we just have too many deer and disease and, it comes in and takes care of everything, or we're going to wise up and say, boy, we really need to start taking some deer out.
Yeah. Well, to touch on that point, Sarah, who is my wife, her grandparents live in the Worcester here, and she's complaining about deer destroying her garden and her plants and stuff, but you can't hunt in this.
Yeah, non-projectile.
Yeah. So like they have a
really?
They have a
That's
big population, and so you can't do anything about it in city limits.
Yeah, it's actually kind of weird, Mike. Around us, most of the bigger cities and even some of the towns and stuff around us have a non-projectile law where even if you are in the city limits, you can't shoot your bow in your backyard for practice.
Holy cow, I did not know that. So here where I live in Athens, Ohio, which we call this the People's Republic of Athens, it's an oasis of blue and a sea of red. There are 8.5 registered Democrats for every 1.5 registered Republican in Athens proper, and they allow hunting in the city of Athens. Now, archery hunting only.
Wow.
But you can't discharge a firearm, but you can bow hunt in the city of Athens, and we're probably as liberal as any town in the Midwest.
See,
that's surprising. I did not know that.
Yeah,
these cities and towns need to, and actually, it's funny. I'll even name drop. You've probably heard of the Medina area. So the city of Medina has a terrible deer population, as in like overran. And the city council proposed a archery only season. You had to have X amount of acres, et cetera. But they were trying to pass a law, and actually the town people or the general public of Medina actually threw a riot and said no. So they had to. So I don't know what they're doing with their deer population, but you can't. Yeah. And that's pretty common. That's honestly pretty common around us that they don't allow it.
So real quick, some of the very biggest bucks being killed in Ohio in recent years are being killed between Akron and Cleveland in housing developments that border the Cuyahoga Valley National Park.
We know about it. Yeah.
They are killing giants that live on that no hunting area, and people are shooting them in their yards.
Yeah, come over to the bird feeder.
Mike, I'll tell you a funny story, and I know that Dan's probably not going to listen to this, so I'll tell it. Kevin, you should probably tell it, Kevin, because it's your buddy.
So I got a buddy that lives in Summit County, and you can apply for like these special hunts within certain sections of
the Cuyahoga Valley,
the park, right? And he was granted access to this, and you're allowed like 2 or 3 buddies, whatever the number is, to hunt. And if you shoot X in the number of deer, I believe you're allowed to go back in this section for the following year, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So he went into there and making all this ruckus and stuff, and I don't know, within
not a hunter. Like, I mean, he's a hunter.
He's a hunter, but like he's very green, right?
Yeah.
He's very
green.
Yeah.
Sure.
So he gets up in the stand, and within 15 minutes, this I don't know, what did we taped it up?
173, I thought.
Yeah, low 170s. Comes walking up, and he smokes this thing like he's a phenomenal shot. Just 10 rings this thing, but like, he got to it. It's just like
listen, Mike. If I was granted access to this property, I would have shot every doe that moved that I was legally allowed to kill, just to keep the access. His buddy kills this 173 and was like, we didn't really go back and hunt it much, and obviously they lost the access because they didn't shoot any does. But dude just Euro mounts it, and it's sits on his dresser.
Right.
He doesn't know like what caliber.
He has no idea what he shot. No idea what he shot.
Right.
Yeah.
So
hey, real quick, fellas, I'm gonna interrupt just for a second.
Yep.
So something I didn't plan on. My cell phone battery is about to die, and I don't have a charger here close by. Is there any way we can take a short break and I can go grab a charger real quick? Is that possible?
That's not an issue at all.
Let's go ahead and pause this for a second. Let me go get a charger, and then we'll start it back up. All right.
Yep.
I'll be right back.
Okay.
Yeah, but
it was right at about 2:22.
Okay.
Should I just let this run?
Yep.
I would. I think.
I'm actually half tempted to set up another camera in case I'm afraid that memory card's gonna full.
Do it real quick. Do you have the card in there?
Yeah, but in this one you're saying?
Yeah.
I'm super afraid that we're gonna run out of memory. And we can wrap it up too. It's not because what we're 220.
220.
Is there anything else you can think of?
I mean, I think that we should give him an opportunity to talk about it.
Yeah, for sure.
He spent the time to come up here with us.
All right, guys. Let me see if I can get this.
Yep, you're good. Take your time, Matt. Had to go take a
All
look.
right. We got to move just a little bit closer.
Give us a few different bucks to look at.
Yeah.
Here you go. Yeah. Pan those around.
All right.
See over that way. This is my man cave here.
Oh, that's an impressive man cave.
Yeah.
I'm working on mine, but yours is a little bit more impressive.
All right. For some reason, there we go. Now it's working.
You've got some time.
Yeah, we're good. There's no rush.
All right. Now I got it. Okay. Let me see if that's showing. Yep. I'm good to go now.
Okay.
All right. Go ahead, Kev. Just kind of get us.
All right. Well, we'll get back into it now. There was a little bit of a break there in the video and the audio, but we're back rolling now. So I think that's kind of a good point to kind of wrap up what we have talked about, and maybe we can talk about like some of your hunting experiences. Do you have anything targeted for this upcoming season? What's cooking for Mike?
Well, first of all, before we do that, and sorry to interrupt, Kevin, I just want to say thank you, Mike, for I realize that you get a lot of flack sometimes because you are the guy that isn't afraid to talk to people, and I do want to say thank you for at least having, the couth and courtesy to come on podcasts like this, to talk to people. I know that you were starting some questions on some Facebook forums and stuff like that. And I just want to say that,
It doesn't go unnoticed.
Yeah. So thank you for doing that, because I don't know you personally, but obviously I do believe that you care about the resource. You've got that room full of 30 deer behind you or whatever it is that if you didn't care about the resource, you wouldn't have those behind your shoulder. So I thank you for what you're doing.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, like I said, I like hearing other people's perspectives. I have changed my mind multiple times about hunting related, fishing related things by just talking to people and listening to other people. I mean, I try to keep an open mind, and on wildlife issues too. Since I've been on council, I've changed my mind multiple times. And over the years of social media, I learned a lot from guys on social media, and a lot of hey, I never thought of that, and boy, that makes sense. And so anyway, yeah, you got to keep an open mind, and so I try to do that, and I appreciate you saying that. And and again, I do take some flack, but I don't mind. I got pretty thick skin. So.
That's good. That's good.
So a couple things. We were talking about hunting experience. So you reminded me of something. Your friend that killed the great big buck and didn't know what he had. Mm-hmm. So this reminded me of a hunting story from probably 20 years ago. A friend of mine, a guy I used to work with, was out of state, and he had some other friends of his come from out of state to hunt on his property. And I was very familiar with his property. So he called me up and he said, "Hey, Mike," he said, "I got these guys in visiting, and I'm out in South Dakota hunting pheasants. And can you show them the boundaries of my property and show them where the oak flats are and good place to hang a tree stand, blah, blah." I said, "No problem." So the first night I took these guys out and I showed them the boundaries of the property, and I gave them some pointers of, places to look and where there should be scrapes and rubs and whatever. And one of the two guys had a climbing tree stand. He climbed up in a straight trunk tree, and the first hour of the hunt, he had two giant bucks meet right in front of him, like 30, 40 yards in front of him, and they started sparring. And both of these deer were like Boone and Crockett class bucks, giant bucks. Yeah. And so anyway, this guy had, I think it's called irritable bowel syndrome or something like that. But he had this hit him, and I remember him vividly telling this story. He goes, "I had to make a decision." He said, "And I chose to come down out of that tree." He said, "I chose." So anyway, he's in a climbing tree stand. He click, 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 click. He comes down the stand. He gets out. He said he could only make it like 30 yards from the tree, and he just dropped his britches and took care of business. So you'd think most people would gather their stuff up, gather their portable tree stand, and go walk out the ridge, right? No, not this guy. He climbs right back in the same tree, 30 yards away from where he just used the bathroom. And about a half hour later, one of those giant bucks comes from the opposite direction, walks over top of the pile of toilet paper that's in the woods, broadside to 25 yards, and he shoots it and kills it. Oh, and it's a perfect example of, when the good Lord wants it to happen, you can't stop it. I mean, you know what I mean? When they want it, when there's just nothing you can do about it, right? Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's just meant to be. Yeah. And that was a perfect example of, and the guy had no idea what he had. It was literally, I scored the deer was 170-inch typical. It's a giant. And it was one of two giant bucks that were on my buddy's property that year.
Dude, could you imagine? Sometimes I can kind of a little bit relate to I don't have irritable bowel, but sometimes I get a little nervous sometimes, and it's like, woo. But I think in that situation, I'd probably want to poop my britches, to be honest.
I'm pretty sure, yeah. So I'll tell you another story where a person made a different decision. So I got a real good buddy of mine, guy I used to work with for years, and he's a great turkey hunter, state champion, turkey caller, all that stuff. And anyway, he had to go out of town for work during our youth turkey season. And he asked me, he said, this was like 15, 20 years ago. He said, "Mike, can you take my son turkey hunting?" I said, "Sure, love to." So anyway, I took this young man turkey hunting. We got on one of those stubborn birds that just wouldn't move. And I mean, he just kept gobbling and gobbling and gobbling. And I gave him the silent treatment, called a lot, called quiet, called loud. I mean, everything you can do, everything I knew to get the turkey to move, couldn't get him to move. And finally, after 15, 20 minutes of nothing, he breaks and comes in, and bang, his kid shoots him. And when he gets up, the kid gets up to go after the turkey. He's like waddling, like he just got off a horse. He's walking like this. And I'm like, "What the heck?" And I go walking up to him. And I said, "Young man, what happened?" He said, Mr. Rex, he said, I was holding it for as long as I could. When that turkey started to break, he said, I had to make a decision. And he said, I decided to go in my pants.
Dude, I give that boy a lot of dedication. Yeah. Seriously, I'll shake that boy's hand.
Yeah. I'll tell you another one like that. So this was during the youth season also. My oldest son, when he was probably 10 years old, we were out, and I remember it was cold out. Youth season comes in early, and it was cold. It was probably like 35, 40 degrees out. And we had two gobblers out in front of us for the longest time, well over an hour. And they were on a little high point. And a lot of times gobblers like to get elevation where they're sure that hen can hear them, can see them, and that just, they won't move.
Strut,
and finally, and I remember I had to go real bad, and he had to go real bad. And the gobblers finally broke and came in, and bang, as soon as my son shoots, we both stand up, face opposite directions, and start emptying our bladders because we were about to pee our pants. The darn turkeys wouldn't move. It's some of my best hunting memories have been with my kids. Do you guys? Any of you guys have kids?
Yeah.
Yep.
Man,
I've got two. And
I've got
Matt
one.
has one. They're real young though.
Yeah.
Oh, guys, you are in for some fun times. You are in for some really fun times.
See, selfishly, I kind of told the wife, I said, because she was asking me, like, I have a daughter, and she's 11 months, so she's still pretty young. But my wife was asking me, she's like, so are you going to take your daughter, hunting? And I said, well, yeah, I'm going to invite her. Kind of like you said, Mike, I have that same mentality. Like, anytime she wants to go, I'll invite her, but I'm not going to make her do anything she doesn't want to do. And my wife was like, how excited are you to take her with you and stuff? And I'm like, well, I'm excited, but selfishly, like, you had mentioned the love thing. I was like, if she gets into it, then old dad's going to have to put her in the good spot. And then I'm going to have to take the B spot. So
that's right.
We'll have to see how that goes. But
I've not been in position A for a long time.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Trust me, when your kids are successful, especially in the woods, you'll be very proud.
When the time comes, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, heck, I do it for my friends even,
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you another funny hunting story. This one's really it's a different kind of story. So that 800-acre block I was telling you about that I had control over for years. So I owned part of it, and then a real good friend of mine owned the other part in behind us. And he also owned a bunch of acreage on the other end of the county. So he hardly ever came out to hunt the ground right behind our house because he had really good hunting right behind his house. Didn't need to, but he made me the agent of the property. So I had full control of the property. He was very gracious, very, very good friend. But anyway, because he liked to hunt, I never really I would never lie to him. I mean, if he asked me, you seen anything or whatever, I would always tell him what he saw. But sometimes if there was a really good buck or something close to the house, I might just not make a big deal about it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So anyway, one evening, my boys were really small. My oldest and youngest were like 6 and 4, maybe something like that. And their names are Ryan and Corey. So anyway, we pull down our driveway and we look out and clear at the end of our yard. And we had a real long yard. Clear at the end of the yard, maybe 100, 150 yards away, there was this giant, and it was a 7-point. It was a 4x3, but it was huge. I think it was 140 class 3x3 as a 6-point. Great big deer. It was the only time we ever saw it. But anyway, he was standing in the backyard, and so we get out of the truck real quiet, and we go in the back door, and we go to the kitchen window. We get the binoculars out, and looking at this thing, and I'm like, now listen, boys, that's a really good deer. So if my friend's name was Alex. Now, if you're talking to Alex, mum's the word on this deer. Got it? Oh yeah, we got it. So the next night, I'm at work or somewhere, and my buddy Alex calls out to the house, and my youngest son Corey, who's kind of a ratchet jaw, he answers the phone, and Alex is like, hey, Corey, what's going on? You guys seen any good deer out there? And Corey's like, yeah. There's this great big 7-point in the yard last night. And Dad says, we're going to try to hunt him. And my other son right next to him goes, hey, Corey, you're not supposed to tell Alex. So that night, Alex calls me and goes, what is that about? Oh, these kids. They'll say the darndest.
Yeah, I don't know. Kids are just making stuff up at this point.
Yeah, exactly. But hey, Corey, you're not supposed to tell Alex.
I cannot wait.
A tip I'm going to give you. You were talking about the acreage that you own there.
Yeah.
Behind your house. So, if your intention is to kill a mature buck. And what I mean by a mature buck is 5.5. I mean, 4.5-year-old buck by most people's standards is mature.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about a really mature buck, you're talking a 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old deer. That's a pretty rare thing, right?
Yep.
If your intent is to, and you want to kill these deer or consistently be able to hunt these deer as much as possible, and every neighborhood doesn't have those deer, but on the years that there are deer like that in your neighborhood, something to consider. So have you ever heard of a guy named David Morris? Do you know that name, David Morris?
No, I don't.
Anyway, if you Google him, he and a guy named Dick Idle and another guy named Steve Vaughn.
I know Dick Idle.
They founded North American Whitetail Magazine. And I used to be a writer I used to write for their magazine. I haven't written a story in a couple of years, but I wrote a lot of articles for them in the 90s and 2000s. But anyway, those guys founded that magazine. And David Morris owns Tecumate, which is a food plot seed supplement company. But anyway, he's arguably the most knowledgeable deer guy for sure that I've ever met. And probably he's killed more Boone and Crockett's than most people will ever dream of seeing in their life. I mean, he's a really, really knowledgeable deer hunter, and he's a student of the game. He's got a master's degree in wildlife biology from Auburn University, and I mean, he's just a really sharp guy and a really successful guy. But anyway, about 10 years ago, he and I were having a conversation about trail cameras, and he said, "Mike," he said, "you get any good deer this year?" And I said, "Yeah, I got a few good bucks." And he said, "When are you seeing them? When?" And I said, "Well, usually it's at night, you know." And he said, "Yeah, well, what time at night?" And I said, "Well, usually it's in the middle of the night. Usually it's, midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock." And he said, "Well, where are you putting your cameras?" And I said, "Well, I'm putting them over high traffic areas. I'm putting them over pinch points and food plots and apple trees and da-da-da. And he said, "Well, are you seeing a lot of other deer?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." And he said, "Well, why do you suppose those big bucks are only coming there late at night?" And I said, "Well, I think it's because big bucks only move around, a lot late at night when it's safe." And he said, "Well, think about it. If it was just the cover of darkness, why wouldn't they be the first person or the first person? Why wouldn't they be the first deer to that food plot if it was just the cover of darkness?" And I started to think about it. And he said, "Let me explain it to you." And so this is a guy who's been radio collaring deer for 35, 40 years. He said, big bucks, mature bucks, when they get to be 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, become antisocial. And what he means by antisocial is they don't like crowds. They don't like crowds of any kind. They don't like lots of squirrels, chipmunks, people, coyotes, dogs, right? They don't like lots of other deer. They're very solitary creatures. You ask anybody that flies a thermal drone, you see a cluster of deer on a thermal drone, and then a satellite deer 200, 300, 400 yards away. That satellite deer, that lone deer bedded off by himself, is almost always a mature buck. Mm-hmm. And that cluster of deer is almost always does, yearlings, 1.5 old, 2.5-year-old bucks. They hang out in groups. And he said, so when you think about it, this whole industry has grown up. Food plots, supplements, feed, bait, whatever, feeders, has grown up around this idea that we want to congregate deer. We want to bring a bunch of deer, as many deer as we possibly can, onto our ground where we have a chance to harvest them. But if the bucks that we're most interested in, the deer we're most interested in, are antisocial, could that be counterproductive? And when he started saying this, lights started going off in my head, bing, bing, bing. Because my strategy for years has been, if I can find a good buck with a trail camera, especially one that's using a specific area, I don't try to kill him right there. I try to kill him in spokes. Like if my camera's here and I'm getting pictures of him here for whatever reason, I go out the spokes and I try to get away from that area, and I catch him when he's up on his feet in the daylight, away from that area, or I'm getting a picture of him at 2 o'clock in the morning. Mm-hmm. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so when he told, that was an aha moment for me. It was an epiphany. So getting back to your land, your 30 acres you're trying to manage and having that feeder in the middle. The theory behind that is, and I understand that theory is, well, if I can concentrate some deer in this area, then in theory, some of them are going to slip through the cracks and they're not going to get killed on my neighbor's property or whatever. But if you're concentrating does and yearling bucks and small deer, those bucks that you're most interested in, those 5, 6, 7-year-old deer, aren't there. They're living somewhere else. They're living on the perimeter. And when I think back to all the trail camera photos I have for all the years of all the big bucks, the mature bucks that I have, it's almost always late. It's not, if it gets dark at 6, it's not at 6:30. It's at midnight. It's at 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And man, when he starts saying it, then with all this drone technology, just absolutely proves it. I mean, 100% proves it that when a buck gets to be 5, 6, 7 years old, they become antisocial. And antisocial means they just don't like to hang around. They only trust their senses. So when you think about how few deer make it to that age class, you can't get that way by being lucky, right? I mean, you could, but I mean, it's extremely rare. There's got to be something unique about you and different. And you can't act like every other deer. If you do, you'd get killed, right? I mean, if they act, if a 5-year-old buck acted like a button buck, he'd get shot, right? He'd get killed. And so what the advice I'm giving you from your property is be careful about what you're doing to lure lots of deer.
No,
100%. I would be more concerned with making a place where a big deer feels safe, where he feels comfortable. And that's not necessarily where all the other deer are. Yeah. So like human intrusion is probably more detrimental than anything. I mean, you guys, Don Higgins, you've heard, and I know Don, he's a nice guy, smart guy, but he talks a lot about hunter intrusion. And I think he's absolutely right. Big buck, I mean, so I watched a video once years ago. I was at a state penitentiary, or the state prison in Marion, Ohio, where they were training bloodhounds to track escaped prisoners. And they took a guy in a jumpsuit, orange jumpsuit, and he ran like a Z across a stubble field. And 12 hours later, they turned those bloodhounds loose, and those dogs were able to track that guy step for step across that field 12 hours later. Well, we have roughly 3 to 4 million olfactory sensors in our nose. A bloodhound has like 120 million or something like that olfactory sensors in its nose. A white-tailed deer has like 240 million. A white-tailed deer's nose is over twice as sensitive as a bloodhound. When we walk through the woods, a deer knows 3 days later. I mean, it doesn't mean that they're afraid of it, but they know days later that this strange predator. There's something else you guys have probably noticed. You notice you see deer out in the fields a lot in the summer, and then all of a sudden the fall rolls around and they get a lot less regular out in the fields. They become more sporadic. You've noticed that, right?
Yep.
Well, there's this strange predator, us, and we're not in the woods most of the summer, right? We're not in the field doing much, right?
Right.
And then all of a sudden we start scouting, and we start hanging tree stands and pruning shooting lanes and doing all this stuff. And they learn quickly, especially the older deer that I call them VFWs, the veterans of foreign wars, the deer that have lived through this stuff for years. Here's that predator again. Yeah. These guys haven't been here since last November, or whatever, or whenever, last September, or whenever it is, and they're back. And that has a lot to do with, people say, oh, well, acorns are dropping. And yeah, that does have something to do with it, but also has a lot to do with how much time we spend in the field. And that's the one thing that obviously the biggest advantage of cell cameras is you can place those darn things there and then forget about them, and you can watch them every day.
No, Mike, I really appreciate that. That's one of my biggest fears, is turning my property into a doe factory. And I've actually, so my plan with the property is I've got about 11 acres of tillable, and then the rest is all wooded. And I've got a lot of, even though we are in northeastern Ohio, we're maybe on the southern end of quote-unquote northeastern Ohio. So I do have some terrain on my property. I have a creek bottom that runs through it, and I have some ridges up and down and some elevation changes. So I actually did TSI work last winter, and I just had a forestry guy come in with my daughter this year. I was a little bit late to the party, but I had a forestry guy come in last weekend, and I wanted to go over all the invasives because I opened up a lot of canopy, and I was just like, all right, so what, I want to control my invasives. So we kind of went over some things that I need to do. And then on the 11 acres of tillable, I actually put in all crops, all road crops, except for an acre and a half of clover and chicory. And my plan was I wanted to, and then another factor that you need to know is that I am in a low deer density area. I'm not in a high deer density area. So I wanted to draw the attention to the property for the first couple of years. And then actually, this year, I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do because I'm a little bit late to the party because of my daughter once again, but I'm going to start cutting back significantly on the food and I'm wanting to get CRP put in, some native habitat, stuff like that, so that way I'm out of the 11 acres, I would love to plant like 2-3 acres of it, and the rest of it all just be nasty CRP. So I appreciate you bringing up that point. But
let me ask you a couple more questions.
Go ahead.
Do you have coyotes in the area where you're at?
Very few. I do have some. I've shot 3 or 4 off the property, but as far as like hearing,
you don't see them a lot on your cameras.
No,
you don't.
No.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah. The reason I ask that is that if you have a lot of coyotes and we have a ton of bobcats down here in my area.
So we don't have many cats.
Yeah, we've got lots of them down here. So back in the 70s, when I first started hunting, and in the 80s, our deer lived in thick cover because they felt secure there. And we would jump them out of that cover when we rabbit hunt, grouse hunting, whatever, or deer hunt, deer drives, all that crap. That's where they were. Today, that's not necessarily where our deer live in this part of the state. When I say they live, they feed in there. They don't bed in there. And the reason being is that's where the coyotes and the bobcats live, and they hunt with their nose. We're no longer the apex predator in this part of the state. The coyotes and bobcats are badgering them all year, and they hunt with, they're more efficient than we are. Yeah. So the deer in my area tend to bed more in like treetops or like a fault, like you said, TSI, where you're knocking down undesirable trees. And yet it's still a fairly open woods, but there's just little tangles in different places and treetops where they can see, smell, and hear approaching danger. And it's harder for a coyote or a bobcat to sneak up on them and that kind of stuff because they can see them coming.
Yeah.
So really thick stuff like rabbit cover, our deer feed in it, they browse in it, but they just don't lie down in it.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. Yeah. Any advice? I'm a sponge when it comes to that. I've never owned my own ground. I'm first generation in my family to ever own ground.
That's awesome.
So yeah, this is all new to me, and I'll take any advice possible. But yeah, my biggest fear is the doe factory. But to be honest with you, another thing you need to know is, I do have a small Amish community in my area as well. So they. Most of them actually that I've talked to are interested in killing big deer, but on the other side, they're hell on does. I mean, oh my gosh, they slaughter the does. So my buck to doe ratio is actually
perfect.
Like almost, I would say this is the God honest truth. I would say like 4-1 buck to doe.
Wow.
So. It's incredible because
that is good.
The Amish just absolutely annihilate does. So
I'm gonna tell you a good Amish story. About 20 years ago, so I used to do a lot of hunting seminars, and I got asked. There's a place. What's it called? It's right there close to us, off Route 30 there in. What's the name of the town? It's this big sporting goods store there, in between Worcester and Massillon.
Sugar Creek, Dalton. Where's their big sporting store though?
No, it's right off 30. Oh gosh, darn it! Or it used to be. They have. I want to say they have like an expo there too now.
Mount Hope.
Mount Hope. That's it. Mount Hope. Yeah, the Mount Hope General Store. Isn't that what it was called, or something like that at one time? Anyway, it's in Mount Hope.
Yeah.
So anyway, I got asked to come up and do a deer hunting seminar up there, and so. The audience was almost all Amish.
Yeah,
it was at a middle school auditorium somewhere out in the country there. And so before I started, I had some props, some grunt tubes, and some different things I was going to talk about. And a couple of Amish guys came down and they were asking me questions. And one guy at that time, the scent lock technology was pretty new. And the guy asked me, he said, "How do you feel about scent lock clothing?" And I said, "Well, I'm not sure that I'm sold on the technology. I mean, if you're breathing, you're giving off human odor." I said, "But I like the clothes." I said, I wear them, it's comfortable clothing and it probably can't hurt, and all that stuff. And he said, "Well, I was reading in such and such magazine that Mike Rex says," and then I realized this guy has no idea who I am. He's just there to listen to some supposed expert talk. And so I'm like, "Well, I got to tell you something, pal." I said, "I know Mike Rex." And I got to tell you, that's the lioness. You can't believe anything that guy. I said, he would rather lie to you if the truth is a better story. You can't believe it. I said, he's just that. And the guy looked at me like, wow, he really didn't like Mike Rex. And then they introduced me, and he was in the front row, and he was like, you know what I mean? It was like,
that's
good. I'll tell you another funny seminar story. So I know you guys are, this is a faith-based show, so you'll kind of get a kick out of this. I got asked to do a seminar down in Maysville, Kentucky. This was several years ago, 20 years ago. And it was at a Baptist church. And I'm not sure why, but I had it in my mind that it was going to be some little one-room Baptist church, not in the middle of some rural area. And when I got there, it was one of those giant, like they had their own Sunday morning TV show and they had an amphitheater. And I mean, it was a huge congregation. And I'm like, oh boy, I probably should have prepared something. And this wasn't like a deer or turkey seminar, or it was just a hunting seminar. They had me come down and talk about hunting. And so fortunately, I started it out with, hey, you guys got any questions? What do you want to talk about? And they started asking me questions, and I knew the answers to all their questions. And then I almost took the Lord's name in a church. I went, oh, gee. And I stopped, and all of a sudden it got dead quiet. And sweat started pouring out of me. And a guy in the front row started laughing. The whole congregation started laughing. They saved me. But I mean, I was this close, and I don't know what came over me. But I was like, oh my gosh, that might have been the most embarrassing thing I've ever done in my life.
Yeah. Oh my.
That congregation too, I didn't charge them. I just did it. I mean, I used to charge you somewhere. I just did it because they asked me to come down. And one of their members drew, I'm not sure what the technical term for this is, but he drew a picture of a strutting gobbler with a charcoal pencil, and it's like 45-degree angle lines, and it's like shadows. And then he framed it and sent it to me, and I have it front and center in my house. It's the most beautiful piece of artwork I could ever own, and it was hand drawn by one of those folks from that Baptist church in Maysville, Kentucky.
Oh, that's cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was real cool. So, real quick, are you guys turkey hunters?
Yeah,
a little bit.
Yeah, I used to be real bad on the old turkeys, but anymore, the population's terrible around us. We got to travel. Actually, Kevin and I are heading to Kentucky
this weekend,
Friday.
Yeah.
So, but the population around us is just terrible.
Well, our population is still good. It's not as good as it was 20 years ago, but it's still pretty good.
Yeah.
But I was just going to tell you, speaking of trail cameras, if you've never fooled around with, so I kind of made a sport out of putting decoys out in areas that turkeys frequent and putting wireless trail cameras over. And it's an excellent way to scout. And some people think, oh man, you're desensitizing the gobblers to your decoys. And no, it's baloney. Turkeys are not smart. Turkeys do not learn from their mistakes. Turkeys are really good at getting away from things that want to eat them. I mean, their eyesight is incredible, and they're extremely nervous creatures, but they're not smart. When I say smart, a coyote is cunning. I mean, you make a mistake on a coyote, it is tough to call him back. Yeah. Or a big buck, you make a mistake on a big buck, and it's a big deal. But a turkey, you screw a turkey up. We've shot at turkeys before, missed them, and called them right back. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I can't tell you how many times we've called in 4 birds, shot one, and the other 3 will beat it up while it's on the ground.
Right.
The comrade just got shot. They're just not very smart. But they're incredibly wary, but they're not very smart. So anyway, I put decoys up over wireless trail cameras, and it is just the neatest thing. I have to go stand the decoys back up almost every day because something knocks them over. If it's not an owl at night or a hawk during the day, or a coyote or a bobcat, it's another gobbler or jakes and hens. But any turkey that's in the area that sees that decoy will probably come over and investigate it. So it's a really good way to scout, to learn are turkeys using that area. Because you can go into an area and see scratchings. Well, there have been turkeys here, but are there turkeys here recently?
Right.
And putting decoys up over wireless trail cam is a really good way to scout an area. And you will not desensitize the turkeys to decoys. They'll still work every bit as good.
That's interesting. I've never heard that. That's a good tip. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
Well,
Mike, I know that when you have a good time flies, but we're almost at 3 hours.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
And we want to be cautious of your time. I do want to ask you if you could just keep it under like 5 minutes, because we're at 2 hours and 55 minutes right now.
Geez.
Out of all those deer behind you, which one's your favorite?
All right, so I'm going to put you on. I'm going to walk over here.
Yep.
So real quick, my favorite is that one. I don't know how well you can see him.
Now we can see him. Yeah,
for good reason too, I'd say.
Oh my, that's the one you're famous for, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's probably my favorite. Now, of all the deer in this room, he was not the hardest to get close to. He was really hard to get close to. I had 2.5 years of my life tied up in that deer. But there was another buck that I hunted. I killed him in 2013. We called him the Teflon Don because we thought he was unkillable, but he was 8.5 years old. And it's interesting. So my middle son shot him, hit him in the rump. He was quartering hard away 2 years previous, and he tried to snake a shot in through the back rib, which was not a good idea. And he wound up shooting in the back leg, and he didn't hit any of those arteries. And the deer survived, but he vanished for a year. And then he came back the next year. And my oldest son got the baton that year, and he hunted him, and he wound up shooting him low in the armpit, right below the heart. And then the next year, I got the baton, and I wound up killing him. But that deer, when we took him to the processor, he had the scar from where my son shot him in the butt. He had the scar from where my son shot him in the armpit. Of course, he had the hole where I shot him. Then he had somebody else's broadhead in his chest where someone had shot him straight on, and he survived that. But that deer, I had a place. So this was on that 40 acres I was telling you that a lot of our deer came off of, that 140-acre piece. We had a spot there that was just, you couldn't have scripted it any better. If you can imagine this, there was a 5-acre rectangular ridge cap field. And at the back left corner of that field, it kind of tailed off down into a really steep ravine, like so steep that the deer couldn't cross it. And there was about a 70-yard gap from the head of that ravine to the point of the back corner of that field. So you had an inside corner and a ravine in behind it. So any deer that was this way, that one had to either walk through an open field, go all the way around that ravine, or walk through that 70-yard cut. It was the perfect pinch point. And we had a stand on, so the field ran north and south. So we had a stand right at the corner at the north, and we had another stand right at the head of the ravine at the south. So anything with a north or a south wind, you'd hunt the north stand. Anything with an an N in it, you'd hunt the south stand. And if anything coming from east or west, I mean, it was a nonstop funnel of deer. And so that deer, the Teflon Don, the first time I laid eyes on him was Halloween that year of 2013. And the wind was out of the north, so I was at the south stand, and he was skirting the edge of the field, and he was about to cross through that cut, which would have been perfect. And he got about 70 or 80 yards out, and he stopped, and he just started throwing his nose up. And I said, there's no way this deer can smell me because the wind's in my face. And he's looking around and smelling and looking, and all of a sudden he looks up, and I'm really high up in a tree. I'm like 30 feet up in a tree, great cover all around me. And he looks right at me, and literally his eyes go like that. And I've never seen this before or since. He started walking backwards. He took steps backwards. He got out in the field, and he walked a big circle all the way around. So then fast forward, that was Halloween, the 16th of November. Perfect conditions, winds out of the south. So I'm now at the north stand, right at the corner of that field, that 5-acre field. And I look to my left, I see some does coming, and right behind him, here's the Teflon Don. He's tracking right in behind him. The does passed right in front of me. I said, this is going to be it's perfect. I'm in position to shoot him. And he gets about 50 or 60 yards from the cut, and stops. And he starts looking around, and the wind is at his back. He can't, or not backwards. It's kind of a crosswind, and he can't smell what's out in front of him. And he looks around, and he did not see me, but he stopped, and he walked all the way down that drainage. He would not pass through that cut unless he could smell what was out in front of him. He just wouldn't do it. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's unbelievable. And about a half hour later, I'm in the stand. I remember I texted my boys saying, I think this deer's unkillable. Not the way we do it. I don't think you can do it.
Yeah.
And from behind me out in the field, I hear, and a doe comes right underneath my tree with her tail up. And from behind me, I hear that, and I turn and look, and here comes a Teflon Don, nose to the ground, just like a bird dog, walks right under my tree, and I shoot him.
Smack.
Stroke of luck. I mean, the way that I wanted to hunt him, he wasn't going to fall for it.
Yeah.
He wouldn't come through that pinch point. He just wouldn't do it. And that's how you get to be 8.5 years old.
Right.
Yep.
Right. I mean, just a different breed of cat.
Those deer will teach you the most, though. The deer that you kill easy, I mean, it's just, they're fun. They're fun to throw on the wall. But, man, them deer that you either don't kill or the ones that take you a couple of years, man, you learn so much more.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
3 years ago, the last 7 weeks of the season, at 49 afternoons, I hunted 48 out of 49 afternoons. And again, I'm a lot older than you guys. That was late season cold and everything else. I was hunting a deer on the Wayne National Forest, and that's kind of how I was challenging myself. Was I really wanted to kill a buckeye big buck in the middle of some large national forests. And I got on a good deer with a trail camera the day before gun season, and he survived gun season. And I had trail cameras everywhere, and so in 48 sits, I had 3 different stands over about a 50, 60 acre area. I was hunting a 10,000 acre piece of Wayne National Forest, and in 48 sits, I saw the deer one time. In 48 sits, I saw him on February the 4th, and he was about 80 yards away, and it took him, I don't know, maybe a half an hour to go 20 feet. He'd take a step, and then he'd look around. He'd take another step, and then he'd look around. And you talk about learning. And unfortunately, the next year, that deer got killed. Opening day of gun season, he got killed. He was on the losing end of a deer drive. A guy from Vermont wound up killing him during gun season. Mm-hmm. But yeah. Those had I been able to get within bow range of that deer, he probably would have been my greatest trophy.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, Mike, I appreciate it.
No problem.
Once again, we thank you. Maybe before hunting season, if you got some time, we'll actually have you on to talk strategy and big bucks, and not just police you about the ODNR and how everything works. Yeah.
Hey guys, real quick. So we're clear also. I do not categorically disagree with a lot of the things that you said.
Right.
I'm just trying to get you to think,
big picture.
From a broader scale. Exactly. Big picture. Yep. That's exactly. You guys, I mean, I feel your pain. I understand what you're saying. I think your motivation is pure, is good. And so, and I will also encourage you to continue to come to those meetings when you can.
You'll see us.
And go to open houses, make yourself heard. I mean, I don't think, you guys are the future of hunting. And so I don't want to discourage you in any way. I appreciate your sentiments, and I do not disagree with most of what you said.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yes.
No problem. It was nice talking with you fellas.
Yes. Thank you.
Hang out for 1 second, Mike. We'll wrap this up and then we'll be good to go.
All righty. Thanks for listening, everybody. And remember, it doesn't matter what you have done in the past. You can always be born again, and born again is out.
Peace.